right. Apparently we're going. Apparently we're going. So I'm gonna go as if we are going. Good morning, hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Red Stone Lapis Lazuli. It is I, your host, Pogo Kiddo. Oh boy, dude. Oh boy, here we go. I am blessed to have this. Let's see if it's gonna work. It's gonna crash. It crashed. It crashed. It crashed. Crash every time. Crash override. Overdrive. Crash overdrive. Angelina Jolie hooked up with Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was with Jennifer Aniston, and he left her to be with Angelina Jolie. Anyways, oh shit, is it popping up, dude? My screen's here, but oh, there it goes. There it goes. All right, now. I don't know if I don't know. OBS. So, hello, welcome to my show. Ta-da! Here you can see I'm a little bit far away from where I normally would start my thing, but and over there is the Savannah village. And then yeah, I started making a house, and then I'm like, I want to do like a piston door that goes up and down. But I was having a problem working out how to get the signal from here up there. And yeah, because look at the way it goes is like this block here. I will just show you. Okay, so power is magical in Minecraft. It just comes out of nowhere. So just by virtue of having a switch, you make power. It's so weird. Just put a switch on it, and all of a sudden you can make power. It's not the other way around. Okay, hey, top chat, all chat. I want to see everyone chatting here. Okay, so when you step on, like, if you put a pressure plate on a block, and you step on the pressure plate, that powers the block. That block has power. Underneath it, like this redstone dust, it looks like it's not filling the space, but you see right there how it has like its own little square on top. That means because it's there, it's transparent, but it fills the whole space. Nothing other than the redstone can be there. So technically, the redstone is touching the block. Even though there appears to be a space, technically they're touching. That's why when you put power into this block, it also puts power into the redstone. And then so the redstone carries a signal over to this block and puts power into this block. Well, this block has already got a redstone torch on it right here, right? So, and that redstone torch is turned on. But when you put power into the block, that block will turn off this redstone torch, which because right now it's being powered by because remember, in Minecraft, only one thing can be in a block space at any time, like any one block. Like I'm an entity, like this. I'm an entity, so I can be in I can be like crammed in a space. But block stuff can only be one block thing in a space ever. So that's why, like, yeah. So even though this redstone torch it looks like it has all the space, it's actually touching. Because it's the only entity that can be in this block. And it's putting power into this place right here and up above it. But there's nothing above it, so don't worry about it. But it's putting power right here. That powers this guy on. So I'm like, great. Isn't that great? That's great. But the problem is now I need to send that same signal from the bottom to the top. But you can see that there's like a number of blocks difference between the distance from there to here and from here to way up there. So what that does is it creates a lag. It creates a lag. And I'll step on the block, and then this one go down, and then 2 seconds later, this one goes up because the lag difference. And then it looks just bad. It just looks bad. So I was working on that for like an hour yesterday. It didn't go anywhere. I might just do the old version. But yeah, Minecraft. So let's get over here. Welcome to my show. It's a little bit late. Sorry, I slept in a bit tonight. What happened? There it goes. Okay. Ooh. So on Friday, AMD released new drivers with new technology for their cards. And actually, the technology works on all the video cards, not just AMD cards. So NVIDIA is like, bro. And it works really good. Like, even in Minecraft, it works really good. Java Minecraft. But because there used to be, I used to get screen tearing when I turned off VSync, and now I don't get any screen tearing when I play Minecraft with no VSync with the new technology. However, I cannot use it during OBS. It doesn't, like, I'm not just playing Minecraft, I'm streaming OBS at the same time. So like it eats up a chunk of my video card here. And it degrades the single player experience. But that's okay, you know. It's a good thing here. Okay. We had a bunch of things happen this week, and one thing I didn't prepare for is the death of Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein, a senator from California, died at the age of like 90. And people were giving her shit for not retiring sooner. The woman died in office, man. Like that's a pretty dedicated public servant. And I'm gonna say, and you'll say, well, she's not a dedicated public servant. Like, what public did she serve? And I'll tell you. Let me tell you. Remember how? Okay, we can all see how Donald Trump has used biased judges who, in his own favor, in order to get rulings in his own favor. When we look in Florida, the reason why Donald Trump wanted to get this done in Florida is because there's only 2 federal judges in Florida, and one of the federal judges in Florida is named Eileen Cannon. Donald Trump lost the election in November. The vote was done and he lost. After he had lost the election, he appointed her as she barely squeaked by Congress to get past Congress, and Donald Trump appointed her after he lost the election. Then Donald Trump would go on to try to overthrow the government, and he'd also steal a bunch of U.S. secrets and send them to his various properties. Well, it just happens to turn out that Donald Trump drew out of the lot Eileen Cannon, the judge he appointed after he lost the presidency. And she was appointed for life. Like, nothing can take her down. She's there for life. And Eileen Cannon has consistently ruled in favor of Donald Trump over and over and over again, to the point where one of her rulings was sent to the what's it called? To the 11th Circuit Appeals Court, and they said, no, this is bad, redo it. But by that point, it was already too late, because the point of the order, Donald Trump isn't trying to win in a legal. He's trying to delay. He tries to delay. Always, always, always delay. That's his modus operandi. Delay, delay, delay. anything you can do to delay the case, because you want to delay until that moment when Donald Trump has power, and at that point Donald Trump can use his power to destroy the rest of American democracy and implement his own like fascist agenda. Like we could already see it, right? He already said that his plan is to get rid of all the independent government workers and make them all appointees of the president who could fire them at will. So in other words, you have to be loyal to Donald Trump or he'll fire you. And he already said he wants to use the government to go after his political enemies. So like it's pretty clear, Donald Trump's a bad guy. On team bad guy. Anyways, how did I get started talking about Donald Trump? Oh yeah, Dianne Feinstein. So Donald Trump lost power, and in comes Joe Biden, and Dianne Feinstein's already the senator. I hear people saying do term limits, and I'm like, no. Doing term limits takes away the choice of people. Doing term limits takes away the choice of people. You on purpose arbitrarily take away their choice, saying I don't like your choice. You can't have it anymore. It doesn't matter how the quality, the candidate quality, right? And this cuts both ways, right? I'm not just saying it for Democrats. It also goes for Republicans. They can choose whoever they want. People can choose whoever they want to represent them. You cannot tell them no, you can't choose that person unless there's a law against it. Such as in the case with Donald Trump. The 14th Amendment, I believe, prohibits Donald Trump from running for holding public office because he waged war against the United States. He's prohibited. So Donald Trump, no, you can't pick Donald Trump. But I don't care how old Dianne Feinstein is or was, right? That's the choice made by her voters. That's her constituency. You can't change it. That's who the people chose. So if they wanted Dianne Feinstein, knowing that she was 90 years old and barely able to go, they chose her. That's who they chose. That's who's going. You cannot if you put a term limit on these offices, you would think, oh, that's just going to help the people. No, it doesn't. Because in order to by serving in office, a person gains something called institutional knowledge. When a freshman senator has no idea or where things go or what's going on, they have no idea. They are into their role. I've seen it, right? I've seen it because it's the same thing that happened in Nevada. Nevada used to not have term limits on its Congress people, not Congress people, but its assembly people for its state. And then the libertarians got it into their heads that there needs to be that the state needs to tell people who can and cannot represent them. So the libertarians, we need to implement. We want to implement these term limits so the state can tell the people which candidates are acceptable. The libertarians did this, and Republicans, in the name of freedom. Anyways, so yeah, I was a committee secretary in the Nevada State Legislature, in the assembly, and I saw how freshmen assembly members would look to more seasoned assembly members to figure out what's going on and how to act. And yeah, the senior assembly members would demonstrate for the younger members how to do the legislative stuff, to pass on their institutional knowledge. And at the end of the term, I could see a distinct change in demeanor in the freshman senators, whereas in the beginning of the term they were very unsure and not even. By the end of the term, they're a lot better and more comfortable with their voice and in their role. So that only gets better over time. They only get better at the game over time, at the game of representing. They gain more and more institutional knowledge. Yeah, you're right. That cuts both ways. It's the same thing with our political opponents. They too gain institutional knowledge and know-how in order to make maneuvers. Sure, right? But that's democracy. That's the way it works. Mitch McConnell has been up there forever. He knows every single dirty little trick there is. He's been there he knows all the ins and outs. He knows all the people. If he needs something done, he'll make a phone call. And that's fine, right? Isn't that great? Isn't that awesome? That he can do that because he's been there for so long. And he's there not because the state forced him to be there, but because his constituents continually vote to put him in power. And that's fine. So Dianne Feinstein, same thing, right? She was put into office by her own people over in yeah. So in Nevada, I saw them implement term limits, and that meant our senior dudes were all leaving, and I was like, the guy at that time, his name was oh, dude, encoding lag, 5.1 frames. I wonder why. Oh, it's getting better. Our dude was Bernie Anderson. Not Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Anderson. He was a teacher from Sparks. And he was the chairman of the committee for the Judiciary Committee. And he had been in office for a long time. But because Nevada had passed this law, he was termed out. He had to leave. So all that and he was a teacher from Sparks, dude. He was a teacher. He wasn't like some lobbyist. He wasn't like some slick politician. He was a teacher. He went back to teaching when he wasn't like in the legislature. He was awesome. He was fantastic. He was the nicest guy ever, dude. He was amazing. He's exactly the kind of guy you want in Congress, in the state legislature. Because he's a freaking teacher in the high schools, in your local high school. He's exactly the guy you want. And he got termed out. He had to leave. So he had to pass on all his knowledge to however he could to the younger people before he left, the younger state legislators. So really, now you're having the shuffling of state legislators all the time. Who's the only people not being shuffled out, who gets to stay there and gain this institutional knowledge? Well, of course, the staff, right? But they're staff. Sometimes they can stay. But really, the people who get who get real power are lobbyists, professional lobbyists. Now they're the only people who are there year after year after year. They're the only one, because all the other senators get termed out. They all have to leave. Only the lobbyists get to hang out and see how things work and learn how it works. Only lobbyists are the ones who get to hang out and make the connections with everyone. And when you need to know how things are done, you can't look to senior members of Congress, of the legislature and assembly anymore, because they're all termed out. Instead, you look to lobbyists to tell you how this institution works. Oh no. Look what you did. You shifted the power away from the people and onto lobbyists. Who get lobbyists? Special interests, institutions that could afford to pay a person to sit 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in the state capitol listening to meetings, because regular people don't have that kind of opportunity. Regular people have jobs. Another thing I hear a lot is that we shouldn't be paying our state reps at all. We shouldn't pay them any money at all. They're making plenty of money being a politician. We shouldn't be paying representatives at all. Man, that's crazy. It sounds good, but it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive, because what ends up happening is that if you don't pay anything to be to do your job, because it's a job, right? It's not like it's a service job, but it's a job nonetheless. You're doing a job. It takes work to represent people accurately and efficiently and well. It's a job. If you don't pay politicians, then you know that guy Bernie Anderson, that teacher from Sparks, who was the best assembly person. That guy can never ever be your representative because he needs to work, dude. He's not rich. He needs to work. If you say, "Hey Bernie, I know you're a teacher. Why don't you stop working and just give to the state for like 6 months and we're not going to pay you. Just do it." Your pay is the joy of serving Nevadans. Fuck you, Bernie. You don't get paid. He's not going to do it. He can't. He has to be a teacher to make money to live. Like, well, great. Now you've just lost a citizen representative. The only people who can represent you are like wealthy people who can afford to take 6 months out of the year off and just not work and not get paid. They're the only ones who can afford to do it. So all you've done by not paying politicians is you turned it into a rich person's game. Only rich people can afford to run for office at that point. I mean, it is that way now, anyways. Like, we should do public funding of campaigns to eliminate. Like, man, we need to really eliminate money from our electoral system. And the Republicans have done the opposite. You know, with the Citizens United ruling, they allowed money to pour into our political system, and no one has to declare where it comes from. Like, oh, it's so awful. But anyways, I don't mean to like be a drag, right? I'm not trying to like bring. Oh yeah, Dianne Feinstein. So everyone wants to hate on Dianne Feinstein for being old in office, but dudes, she was there for a reason. It's not like she was just up there just to make you mad. She was there for a reason. She was one of the deciding votes on the Judiciary Subcommittee in Congress. It's because she was there and she went to Congress that Joe Biden was able to install a whole lot of federal judges. You know, federal judges that needed to be filled. Otherwise, people like Donald Trump would fill them with corrupt people, like Eileen Cannon. So Dianne Feinstein did us a service by holding on to her office. If Dianne Feinstein decided, nah, dude, I'm gonna retire. You're right. You guys are all y'all are right. Fuck y'all. I'm too old for this bullshit. Fuck you. I'm going home. If she did that, what would happen? Well, the California senator or governor would appoint a California senator, Democrat, to take her place, you know, until the next election. But that doesn't change the agreement on the Judiciary Committee. Now the Judiciary Committee up in D.C. is down a member. They need a new member. The new senator doesn't just get Dianne Feinstein's old committee seat. No, they have to vote on it because Senate is like 50-50 right now. So it's power sharing between Democrats and Republicans. So Chuck Schumer has to make a deal with Mitch McConnell in order to say, hey guy, we're down a member. Can I appoint this new person to take Dianne Feinstein's seat? and Mitch McConnell's going to say no. So that means no more federal judgeships for Joe Biden. I mean, as it is now, no more federal judgeships to Joe Biden because Dianne Feinstein died, and Mitch McConnell is not going to let her replacement take her seat on the committee. But she held on as long as she absolutely possibly could in order to get as many federal judgeships as possible. So, like, you got to give her that. Number two, she was the chairman. I have Empty Wheel to thank for this tidbit of reminding. Dianne Feinstein was the chairwoman on the committee, the oversight committee that oversaw that did the report on the CIA's use of torture. Do you remember that? I mean, I think maybe the younger generation have no idea about it. Right? I mean, like, how much do they know about the Iraq War? Like, it was they were babies when it happened. During the Iraq War, The USA literally sent its own people to invade another country. The USA did so because the Republicans presented evidence to the American people that Iraq was about to attack the United States with weapons of mass destruction and kill multitudes of people. It turned out it was a big fat lie. It was a big fucking lie. They fucking lied. They lied about the whole thing. So they sent a bunch of American soldiers, American people over to Iraq based on lies. And so they invaded a sovereign nation and destroyed its government and killed a bunch of people based on lies. And war is fucked up, right? War is a bad thing. War will mess you up regardless. I don't care how good you are. War will mess you up. That's the nature of war. It's a bad thing. War is a bad thing. The nature of war is it will fuck you up. And yeah, a lot of our troops were put into bad situations. You ever hear of the Stanford prison experiment? So I thought it was bullshit. I was taught about the Stanford prison experiment in high school, and back then everyone was like, "Oh, this is like a great experiment. Look how Philip Zimbardo, I think Zimbardo or something like that, was the guy, and he made his entire career based on that based on that experiment. Well, years later, there was doubt cast on the experiment because it turned out people might have been told what was expected of them, and so they played out their roles instead of just naturally having it go. People were. I think it was like people were told how they were expected to behave, and so they played it up. So there was doubt cast upon that experiment. And we couldn't really do it again anyways because it's unethical, right? It's unethical. So what were the results of this experiment? I keep talking about it. The Stanford prison experiment was this college professor took a bunch of college students and paid them like to pretend to be guard and prisoner. And then he recorded the whole thing with cameras. And they only did it on the weekend. It wasn't like a full-time job. They only went in on the weekend to do it. And they would sit in the cell for 8 hours. And they'd have a guard there for 8 hours, right? And they would just record it. And that's it. Like, literally, that's it. That's it. And so what happened is some of the prisoners started to rebel. And so the guards, and they're just, they weren't really prisoners. But that was their role to play. And so they played it out. And so they rebelled. And then the guards, that was their role to play, started being like pretty sadistic, like about as being guards toward the people, to the point that the prisoners became really depressed, even when they're outside of the weekends. When they're just at their normal life, they got really, really depressed. And the guards got really, really agitated and more like aggro, to the point that they had to end the experiment early because it was getting too dangerous for the people. So Philip Zimbardo was saying, look, this experiment shows that our institutions create negative outcomes just by being what they are. The institutions, by the nature of what they are, it creates negative outcomes. And then there was a bunch of doubt cast on the experiment. But then, in the aughts, the United States created a natural experiment for us. Like, no one, like, yeah, it's fucking unethical to do that, like, in a experimental environment. It's unethical to do that to people. You can't do that. It's unethical. We know better now. However, the United States did it anyways. I hate to say. Hold on. More coffee. The United States did it anyways. The United States invaded Iraq and got a bunch of political prisoners. And those prisoners were kept in prisons. And those prisons had to be guarded. But The United States doesn't have like a fucking prison industrial complex in Iraq. So the people who are you gonna get to guard the prisoners? U.S. troops. And guess what happened? Guess what happened? Just like in the Philip Zimbardo experiment, Stanford prison experiment, just like that, the troops weren't told outright to be mean, but they were encouraged by their superiors. And so of course it's going to play out that way. Of course. So U.S. troops tortured Iraqi prisoners. Like, were they guilty? Who the fuck cares? You don't torture people. Like, that's immoral. That's immoral. You don't torture people. So yeah, that happened. It was a natural experiment, and it showed that when humans are put into roles and they're given expectations from superiors, they will play it out, regardless of who they are. I don't care how good you are. It doesn't matter. Eventually, you're gonna find someone who's gonna like follow through on it. Why did I even start talking? Oh yeah, Dianne Feinstein, Stanford prison experiment. Oh yeah, Dianne Feinstein was the one who let us know about this. She's the one who was the chairman of the committee that blew this wide open. The CIA was totally complicit. They called it enhanced interrogations, and that's where we got the idea of waterboarding. Do you know what waterboarding is? It's basically like drowning, like killing people, slowly killing people is what that is. They call it enhanced interrogation. They say it's just pouring water on people. No, I mean, like, think of what you're doing is you're like, it's controlled drowning. So you put you put the people at an incline, right? So their head is lower than their feet. And you put a wet cloth. It's wet, right? It's a wet cloth over their mouth so that it restricts their airflow going in. Then you pour water on them. So it further restricts their airflow. They literally can't breathe, because if they try to breathe, water is going to go in their esophagus, and then they're going to start drowning. And then you're going to say, well, they can't possibly drown because they're at an incline the other way and whatever. There's not enough water. Well, that's not the point. The point is disrupting their breathing, their rhythm, to the point that the heart rate goes up so high they have a heart attack and die. Like, it's literally controlled. You're like slowly killing a person. That's what it is. That's what it is. And what did this report find out? What did Dianne Feinstein's report find out? Did the CIA's torture program get any kind of good information? I mean, like, yeah, right. Sure, there's a bad guy, but the bomb's ticking, so we need to know. That never ever happened. Never fucking happened. It never ever happened. That is entirely fictional. But it was a meme planted in people's brains in the aughts before people understood what memes were. And it stuck. And it gave justification. It gave cover for the CIA to torture people. Like, there was never a time when which you had to torture people for time-sensitive information because you couldn't wait. Never. But what did we find out? We found out that the information gleaned from torture was bad. It was bad information. Turns out people will literally say anything if you torture them. Who would have thought? You mean people will say anything to get you to stop hurting them? Really? Do you understand why the Iraq War was so bad? Like I can't, oh my God. And you have to understand, not only was the Iraq War so bad, it was only there because George W. Bush was in power. And Because remember, Iraq had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. Nothing to do with 9/11. It had nothing. America was all riled up about 9/11. We invaded Afghanistan because supposedly that's where bin Laden was, when in actuality bin Laden was in Pakistan. The Taliban had offered to give up bin Laden to the American government if the American government provided proof to the Taliban that bin Laden had done it. And the Americans wouldn't do it. So anyways, so there was no reason at all whatsoever to invade Iraq. There was none. Yeah, Saddam Hussein was a bad, torturous guy. That didn't stop us before. He was our ally for like 20 years. So he was a bad guy, yeah, for sure. But like, he was our bad guy. So, anyways, so yeah. And like H.W. Bush, the daddy of W. Bush. Remember, isn't that weird? Isn't that funny? Because before there was W. Bush, there was H.W. Bush. H.W. Bush, get this, was the director of the CIA, the same institution that ended up torturing people in Iraq when his son became president. Oh my God. All right. And his son only became president. Why? Because the Supreme Court selected him. Not because the people voted him in, but because the government installed him. The Republican government installed him as president. So the whole thing is fucking dirty, dude. I can't get over how dirty it is. It's such a bad story. Dianne Feinstein was there though. And she put out this report that let us know that no good information was ever obtained through torture. It was a thoroughly bad program the entire time. And the W. Bush administration defended everybody involved. Alberto Gonzales, Attorney General, right? The guy who should have done something about it, signed off on it. He signed off on the torture. Alberto Gonzales, Attorney General. Fuck that guy. Gina Haspel, I think, was the director. And she's still the director of the CIA. I don't know if she was the director, but she was involved in the torture. And she's still there. Biden picked her and to remain there. So yeah, it's important to understand history because you gotta know history to understand how we got to where we are right now, and it gives context to why things are the way they are right now. So Dianne Feinstein served us well. She served the United States with honor. She made us see the things that we didn't want to see. She let us know that we too, Americans are not exceptional. Americans are not special. Americans can be corrupted just as much as anybody else. It's not just Germans who can become Nazis. It's not just Japanese who can become fascists. It's not just Italians who can become fascists. It's not just Russians who can become fascists. Americans too can become fascist as well, and they have to remain vigilant. Okay, with that warning. And this is like Minecraft history morning. And look, no one's watching my show. That's okay. It's too slow to watch in real time anyways, right? You gotta like watch it on double time after I'm done. All right, let's see what do we got here. So right now, this is like the big deal for a lot of people. I don't know if you can. So this is a map, right? This is a map of like East Europe and West Asia. Yeah, this is kind of like the dividing point, I guess. Would you say this is the dividing point between like East and West? I don't know. It's all mushy right here. But right here is Ukraine, right? So we all know what's going on with Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine and took over all this part right here. We already know this. You know, I should like do a snip of it. That way I can like draw on it. New. Yeah, dude, that's brilliant. Ta-da! Close that. I got this snip. Oh shit, it's all messed up. Okay, I got the snip, sort of. Okay, we already know Ukraine, right? Russia invaded Ukraine. Here, use this one. Russia invaded Ukraine and took over this part, and this part, and this part. Right, that's Russia, and then Ukraine's trying to come back. Okay, but that's not the only place that Russia's doing their thing. Remember, back in the 90s and in the early aughts in 2008, Russia also attacked this little country right here called Georgia. So Georgia declared independence from Russia in the 90s. But Ukraine, but Russia didn't like that. So Russia invaded and took over all this chunk of Georgia, and then it took over all this chunk of Georgia. Just took it over with its military, and what it did was its first example of information warfare. Now, remember I told you how I told you how Russia since a long time has been using information warfare because they know they can't defeat us militarily. Like their military is significant. It's big, it's powerful, it's scary, right? I'm not saying Russian military is not scary, but the problem is they're not mobile. They can't go anywhere. They're only threats to their immediate neighbors. Only people next to them can they get to. Maybe deeper into Western Ukraine or Western Europe, but they can't really like go anywhere. They're not mobile anymore, but their near neighbors have to watch out. So Georgia is a near neighbor and Russia just came and like took over stuff. Here like that. Russia just came in and took over like massive chunks of their land because they can do so, and then what they did is they used their media to put out bad information, which confused the Western journalists, and it confused the troops in Georgia, so that no one understood what was going on as the Russians did it. So that was the first example of how the Russians did information warfare. Then they did the same thing when they took over the Ukraine, eastern Ukraine. They used little green men. Basically, they're Russian troops, but the Russian troops didn't have any insignias on them, and they came in from Russia and they like set up a bunch of separatists. They like brainwashed local Ukrainian people into believing that the Russians had the best interests had their best interests in mind, and that they should betray the Ukraine. So Russia broadcast all this disinformation into eastern Ukraine, moved its troops in, and then the Western world didn't understand what was happening, and so they pretty much let Ukraine do it. Then Ukraine had a revolution to kick out their president, who was a Russian puppet. Then they had a new guy, Poroshenko, inside, right? But when the Ukrainians kicked out the Russian puppet, when did they invade? It was 2014. 2014 is when I don't know when Putin invaded Crimea. I don't remember. But bit by bit, they've been taking over Ukraine, the Russians, with military. But with information warfare. That's the thing they've been using. Information warfare. Get this out of the way. What is information warfare? I already played that clip, but I can play it again so you get context. Man, I'm slow this morning. Well, I have no one to talk to, so like it's hard to like steer.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand.
There's nothing to do with espionage. Only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process, which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare.
So understand, when you talk about espionage, when the Russians talk about espionage, when they talk about stuff, espionage is not sending spies over to infiltrate military compounds to take photos of stuff. No, espionage is all about this thing, this Russian technique. 85% of their money is spent on this thing called active measures. In the language of the Russians, it's called active measures. In the language of Americans, it's called reflexive control. What is that? What is reflexive control? It's the idea of and both of those words are like kind of like hide the real meaning of what it is. But it's a mind control technique. It's not literally a mind control technique. But what is mind control? But controlling someone's choices, right? That's like mind without them knowing. Mind control is controlling someone's choices without them knowing. You're controlling their mind because they're without them knowing. They believe they're doing it on their own free will, but you're actually controlling their mind. So there's a word for that. The Americans call it reflexive control. The Russians call it active measures. And what it is you make it so that you frame things in such a way. You frame things in such a way that it looks like you have options to choose from, but really the frame has already dictated to you and limited the choices before you. If you accept the frame, you've excluded all these other things automatically, but you don't realize it because all you've done is you've accepted a frame. You didn't actually do anything. The only choice you made was to accept the frame. If you accept the frame and choose between the presented choices, then like they've controlled, right? They've funneled you into a direction. Then the next choice, the next frame you're presented is also similarly presented in such a way and it flows naturally out of the first frame. So once you've bought in, it just starts becoming a whole. It starts just flowing into itself, but it's all been controlled. You're in a tunnel. They made a tunnel for you, and you're just going along the tunnel. And it's literally what they do, right? It's literally what they do. Now, I told you the most basic aspects of it, but how does that actually play out? Well, in order for that frame to even come to your attention, it has to come to you. It has to come to you, right? Americans aren't gonna fucking just throw it in your face. There's no way. They're busy with their own stuff. You're a Russian agent for the KGB. You're trying to infiltrate American society and destroy American society. Why? Because Russians can't defeat Americans militarily. They can't do it. American hardware is superior. American training is superior. American intelligence is superior. Americans, like the American manufacturing, superior. And then everything about Americans, like warfare, is superior. Everything. So the Russians cannot defeat the Americans through military means. They have to find another way of doing it. Now, Americans bought into their military superiority, and it kind of like made them blind to other stuff. That's the problem. It's like, oh, if they can't defeat us militarily, that's the only thing that matters, right? No, because that's not the only thing we are. We're not just a military. They don't have to attack our military. So the Russians want to attack the people instead of the military. They can't use the military. They have to use psychological methods to attack the people. So remember, the first problem is you got to make this frame, because you can't control people's brains unless you can present with them the frame. Remember, the frame gives them the false choices, and they have to accept the frame before they can go anywhere. So if they can't see the frame, then they can't make the false choice. So your first job as a Russian infiltrator is to present people with the false frame. That way they can make the false choice and begin the process of demoralization. But in the 80s, right? This guy's operating in the 80s. How do you, like mass media, how do you reach people's brains? Through mass media. But mass media in the 80s is nothing like it is now in the 2020s. It's nothing like that. In the 80s, mass media was controlled by capital interests, people with a lot of money. Like, you couldn't broadcast to millions of people. Yeah, sure, everyone had a television. Sure, everyone had a television, but you couldn't access American brains unless you dealt with the television studios. You had to deal with the television studios. And really, there were like three: ABC, CBS, and NBC. I think there might have been four. I forget what else. There were like three big ones. The three big studios, like, controlled, like, had a massive market share. So if you wanted to get your information out, your story out, you had to deal with the big three. And if you're Russia, you're not going to deal with the big three. Capitalism? No. So then fine, you want to print it out, right? You want to print it out. But not everyone has a personal printer at home. Not everyone has a computer at home where they can print up and design their own thing, right? Nobody's got that, in fact. Only if you're a big business do you have that kind of capacity. So fine, right? Do you think the Russians are going to deal with like businesses to make them a newspaper, to distribute and hire newspaper boys to go like deliver hand papers, like literal papers to people's literal doorsteps? Do you think Russia has that capacity? I mean, no one's going to do it. No one's going to do it for them. They might have the money for it, but no one's going to be like, sure, I'll take your money to deliver communist propaganda to people's doorsteps. No way. It would never happen. It's like, you want to, maybe you can buy an AM radio station and broadcast in like the woods where no one will catch you. Maybe. But the FCC is looking for you, right? The government is looking for you. If they hear you broadcasting on an unlicensed channel and you're doing bad stuff, the government's going to come after you. So really, they can't even do radio stations. So they can't do anything. They can maybe like convince a few like Americans to locally produce propaganda, but everyone makes fun of them. So it's not going to go anywhere. In the 80s, this active measures idea, great idea, can't go anywhere. But they're trying, right? The Russians are trying. They're aware of this. They know this works. They know it works because they do it to their own people. Maybe it doesn't work in the United States because the Russians don't control the media in the United States. But in Russia, they do. In Russia, they do. And for sure it works in Russia. They can totally control the people in Russia. The people of Russia are not free. I know that there's a lot of Ukrainians and Polish people who are real fucking pissed off at the Russian people because the Russian people, a lot of them are pro-war. They're pro-invasion, right? And they're like, motherfuckers, you want to invade my land and kill my people. Fuck you. Like, fuck you. Okay. Understandable sentiment. But understand that the Russian people themselves are not free. They don't have free consciousness. Like, maybe they can get themselves free, and it'd be good if they could, but they live in an environment in which the media is controlled by the government, and they can't even get good media. So they're constantly being bombarded with these false dichotomies, constantly steering them into a direction favorable to the state, which is the oligarchs. So it works. They know it works, right? It works on their own people. They use it against their own people. Then so they know it works. And then this guy Yuri in the 80s is telling us Americans about their program. Here, let's continue.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions.
Okay, understand what he's saying. The idea is to change the perception of every American. What is the goal? What is the goal? To change the perception. The perception. The goal, the target of the Russians is the American perception of what? Of reality. To change the American perception of reality. That is the goal of the Russians. They spend 85% of their espionage budget on changing the perceptions of Americans, of reality of Americans. They want to change the perceptions of of reality. Go back, man. Tell me again.
Extent that despite of to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions. So you change it. The goal, again, the target is the perception of Americans, perception of reality of Americans. And it's to change it to such an extent that nobody is able to come to sensible conclusions, despite the abundance of energy, of information. Even though you have all the information necessary to make a sensible conclusion, even though it's right there, their perception of reality has been altered so much that they can't use it to come to a sensible conclusion. Do you understand? So the goal of the Russians, of this active measures, of this brainwash, it's a brainwashing technique, right? It's a mind control technique because you want to control the minds of other people. They know it works because they use it on their own people. Now, the goal of it is to change the perception of every American, the perception of reality, to change the perception of every American to such an extent, to change their mind, their perception of reality to such an extent that no one is able to come to a sensible conclusion despite the abundance of evidence. You can have all the evidence in the world, but they will be unable to process it to come to a sensible conclusion.
That's the goal of of this active measures brainwashing mind control technique. He just fucking tells you right there. Like, it's super clear, and it doesn't sound like brainwashing. It doesn't sound like mind control, because like immediately when I hear mind control, I think of helmets and like radio waves. And people bring like, ooh, yes, master. That's what I think of, but it's not like that. Mind control is not like that. He tells you, this Russian dude tells you what mind control is. Mind control is the idea, listen, is to change the perception. It's all about changing perception. It's all about perceptions. You don't care about the truth. You don't care about what's real. You don't care about what's actual. Your goal is the perception. The perception of truth. In fact, you don't want people to be aware of the truth. That's why you're changing their perception of the truth. That's why you're doing it. You're doing it so that even though the truth is right there, no one is able to come to a conclusion about it. No one is able to figure it out. Even though the truth is right there, no one is able to get to it. That's how you can control them, right? If no one's able to get to truth, what do? They have to rely on somebody for something. If truth is not your basis anymore. So the goal of the Russians is to change the people's perception of truth so much that they're unable to see it. They're unable to come to sensible conclusions. Well, why can't you come to a sensible conclusion? Because you can't see truth anymore. Even though it's right there, you can't see it. That's the nature. Do you understand? Okay. But this is not just this point. It's a long train. I'm going to draw it out more. But it's good to have a strong basis.
In the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information. Even if
you cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information. Remember the grand jury of the Trump in I think it's North Carolina. No, Georgia. The grand jury in Georgia of the Trump conspiracy to overthrow the election in Georgia. There's literal voice recording of Donald Trump asking the election official of Georgia to find 11,000 votes so he can win the election in Georgia. There's a huge paper trail of people that ties them to this attempt to overthrow the government. There's witnesses all over the place that the grand jury saw. So there's tape, there's evidence, and before, like after the grand jury, I found out that one of the guys has already pleaded guilty and is going to cooperate in the conspiracy. So already one guy has already flipped. But despite all of that information, like, oh, here we have literal voice recording of Donald Trump asking to find 11,000 votes to overthrow the election. Even though we had all that information, there was still one guy on the jury, the grand jury of 21 people. There was still one guy who voted down the line to acquit all the people. So he was saying, despite the abundance of energy of information that you've given me, authentic information, I cannot see Donald Trump doing this crime that you accuse him of. Despite the abundance of energy, I cannot see a connection between Donald Trump and the attempted overthrow of the Georgia election. I don't see it. That's what that guy is saying, right? In other words, he's a perfect example of the person that Yuri is talking about. It's there it is, right? There it is. It really works. I'm not making it up. I'm not like being a fucking tinfoil hat guy. We can see it in action, and the FBI will even tell you about it. Dude, look it up. Reflexive control. That's what the Americans call it. It's not bullshit. It's a real thing. And it works. Okay.
If you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible.
The process of demoralization, that's the key word, demoralization, is complete and irreversible. That sucks, dude. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe that's true. I want to believe that maybe in the 80s it was complete and irreversible, but I want to believe that people are able to free themselves of brainwashing. I want to believe it. And I'm sure there's evidence of it, right? I'm sure there's evidence of people who were right wingers, full like true believers into the Republicans, and then they into Donald Trump, and they've since turned around. I want to believe that's happened. That's possible. I don't want to believe that all these people are just lost forever, the way Yuri says. But what does Yuri say? That even though you can show them that white is white and black is black, it won't change their minds. That's someone who is completely demoralized. That's the key word, demoralized. So we can start making definitions. A demoralized person is a person whose perception of reality has been altered to such an extent that they are unable to come to a sensible conclusion despite the abundance of information, of good information. Even though you give them good information, they are unable to come to a sensible conclusion about themselves, the defense about for themselves or for their country. They can't defend themselves. Even though you give them good information, they're unable to defend themselves. No, let's go back. So remember, a demoralized person that's the word he uses.
Or psychological warfare.
So remember, the whole thing is psychological warfare. 85% of the Russian espionage budget is spent on psychological warfare. Why? Because the Russians know they can't defeat the Americans on a military basis. They have to use psychological methods.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality.
All right.
Of every American.
Okay, so a demoralized person is someone whose perception of reality has been changed
to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
So, again, a demoralized person is a person whose perception of reality has been altered to such an extent that they are unable to come to a sensible conclusion in regards to defending themselves, their community, their families, and their country. That's a demoralized person. Okay, I want to pause that for a moment. Think about, and I want to come back to the United States. I was talking to a couple of neighbors. There's a couple of neighbors in my neighborhood who I try not to interact with them anymore because it's just dangerous. But I got an insight into what they're about. I got insight into what they're about. They agree with Putin. They agree with Putin that the United States should not send weapons to Ukraine. They're with Putin. And they, like Putin, they agree that they agree with Putin about weapons to Ukraine. Number one. So by extension, so you have to understand, Ukraine. You cannot look at Ukraine as just Ukraine. You can't do it, right? It's not. Or the Russian invasion of Ukraine. You cannot look at it separate from everything else. You can't. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is tied intimately to the Chinese, the potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan. They are tied completely. When you look at one, you're looking at the other. Every time. When you look at one, you're looking at the other. China is looking at Ukraine to see how the West would react and respond to an invasion of one of its allies. China wants to know what's up with the West when one of its allies gets invaded. Like, it's not like a super like core ally, but it wants to be a core ally. It wants to move closer to them, and it wants to move closer to them. What does the West do? What do the Americans do when one of their allies is threatened? That's what China's watching, because China's looking over at South Korea, China's looking over at Japan, China's looking over at the South China Seas, China's looking over at the Philippines, China's looking over at Australia. So China's looking over at India, and China's looking over at Taiwan. So China wants to know, what's the West going to do if one of their allies gets invaded? And so far, what China sees is what happens is the invader loses. That's what's going to happen. The invader loses. So China's watching and says, oh, so far, Russia's fucking losing. It's invading and it's losing because the West is supplying Ukraine. And Russia knows that its hardware can't match Western hardware. It knows. It can't win militarily. It was gonna try to win with like a sneak attack, but it didn't work. So they were gonna try to win militarily, but Russia can't win militarily against a Ukraine that's supplied by the West. So, what's Russia doing? It's deploying its psychological operations. What are the psychological operations that Russia's deploying? Well, remember, its primary concern is that it's going to lose militarily because Ukraine is being supplied by the West, and Western materials are superior to Russian materials. So what Putin needs to do is to cut that off, to stop Ukraine from getting material from the West. So it sends out a message to its people who are demoralized, right? The same thing they did to Eastern Ukraine when they invaded Eastern Ukraine. They sent radio messages to the people in Eastern Ukraine to confuse them, right? To demoralize them. Same thing over here. They've been working to demoralize Americans, and they have an army of demoralized Americans. What are demoralized Americans? Those people whose perceptions of reality have been altered to such an extent that they're unable to defend their own country. So Putin is putting out this message of demoralization to his army. And he wants them saying, hey guys, stop supplying Ukraine. Stop supplying Ukraine. It's in the interest of Russia to stop supplying Ukraine. Stop supplying Ukraine. Putin wants you to stop supplying Ukraine. And the demoralized people are hearing this message, right? The whole point is that they're unable to discern what is real and what is not. A demoralized American is an American whose perception of reality has been altered to such an extent that they're unable to defend themselves or their families. So here, this demoralized American is hearing this message from Putin, and they're thinking, oh yeah, it's a good message. Maybe Putin isn't giving it directly, right? Maybe he's not giving it directly. He's not calling up his Americans and saying, hey guys, this is your pal Putin telling you fucking knock off those weapons to Ukraine. No, he doesn't do that. What he does is he sends it out through his intermediaries, his puppets, right? Elon Musk is a puppet of Russia. The Republicans are all allied with Russia. Remember, Republicans only have power because in 2016 because they allied with Russia, and they continue to operate to help Russia. Remember how Kevin McCarthy almost shut down the government? It was because he wanted to stop aid to Ukraine for Putin, to help Putin out. He was willing to shut down the American government in order to help out Putin. Kevin McCarthy. Oh, fuck. So these demoralized Americans are hearing messages not from Putin directly, but from Putin's intermediaries, his messengers, like Fox News and Rupert Murdoch. Because remember, they're all allied. You have to understand. How do you know they're on Team Putin? How do you know? How do I know? Because I look at their ideology. If they're authoritarian, that means they're on Team Putin. Fox News is authoritarian. Republicans are authoritarian. Elon Musk is authoritarian. Russia is authoritarian. That's why they're all on the same team. That's how I know. And you could say, hey, Pogokiro, hey, Robert, isn't this brainwashing technique immoral? Isn't it immoral? Yes, it's unethical. Yes, of course it is. Yes, it is. It's unethical. It's terrible, dude. But that's the thing. Do you believe in free will or not? If you're an authoritarian, you don't believe in free will. You don't, because free will implies freedom. And authoritarians don't actually believe in freedom. They'll use the word, they'll use the concept, but they don't actually mean it. Because it's only freedom for the elite. Because ultimately, authoritarianism relies on hierarchy. And it's only the elites at the top that get the freedom. Under authoritarianism. Contrary is the democratic way. The democratic way, wherein the power is invested in the people. That's why, but for democracy, you have to have truth. Truth is paramount in democracy. If you don't have truth, then you're running on lies, and when you run on lies, bad things happen. So truth is the enemy of authoritarian regimes, and active measures, reflexive control, is all about obscuring the truth. They don't care what the truth is. They want you to destroy your ability to discern truth. I mean, what does it mean to alter a person's perception of reality? It means to take away their perception of reality. This is the truth. This is your perception of truth. I want to come along and take and change your perception so that you can't see this truth anymore. You can't see this anymore. It's gone. And instead, you are so confused, you're unable to defend yourself or your country. That's the exact nature of to take away your self-control, your self-agency, to take away your freedom. That's the entire purpose of this Russian technique. The entire purpose. To make people lose the ability to see the truth so that they're unable to defend their country.
You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years
We don't have that much time. We don't have 20, 15 years to wait. we kind of got to do it like in 2024. I don't mean get rid of like the way he implies it. That's terrible. I mean educate, dude. I mean education. And I believe that through technology, through advancements, both like of all kinds, techniques of all kinds, we're able to heal people, and it's not going to take 10 to 15 years, 20 years.
Educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people.
Nah, it won't take that long.
Acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
It won't take that
the next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. It's what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations,
defense systems. Economy, foreign relations, defense systems. You want disruption, right? That's what he said. The next stage is destabilization, disruption. You want to destabilize economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. Okay, so let's look when Donald Trump took power. When Donald Trump took power in 2016, he alienated all our allies, cozied up with all our enemies, and then he tried to overthrow the government when he lost the election. That's pretty destabilizing. But that's not all, right? Donald Trump didn't act alone. He had allies inside the Republican Party, and those guys acted to further, right? What are the essentials? Economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. Let's look at all the ways that Republicans have disrupted these three key issues. All right, economy. Republicans under Kevin McCarthy have almost defaulted on the American debt. That caused the United States government to lose credit rating, and that would wreck the American economy. Under Kevin McCarthy, that's the government almost shut down, which would have wrecked the economy by ruining a bunch of, taking away people's like livelihoods and checks and shit. People would have to work without getting paid. All right, so. They're doing all sorts. Kevin McCarthy is doing all sorts of things to disrupt the economy. Then the next thing was foreign relations. Foreign relations is generally the purview of the president, of the executive branch. Generally, I mean, yeah, Congress can pass laws, but generally, you want the president to handle foreign relations. Well, Kevin McCarthy almost shut down the government last night. Why? Because his buddy Putin wanted the United States to stop sending aid to Ukraine. So Kevin McCarthy was on the verge of shutting down the government of the United States in order to help Putin out. That's foreign relations, dude. That's foreign relations. That's 100% foreign relations. Now remember, what happens to Ukraine, Ukraine is tied directly to Taiwan. They are not separate. They are not separate. Whatever happens to Ukraine is going to happen to Taiwan. Fucking guarantee it, guys. Guarantee it. So, right now, China is watching as the Republicans try their fucking damnedest to pull out the rug from underneath Ukraine, from an American ally. Because why? Because the Republicans ally with the authoritarians in Russia, the oligarchs in Russia. They're allied. They're on the same team. So you can bet that when authoritarian China tries to invade Taiwan, Republicans will do the same thing. Republicans will try to stop the Americans from defending Taiwan. You can guarantee it. Fucking guarantee it. Remember how many deals Donald Trump made with the Chinese government? His daughter, dude, Ivanka Trump. They made fat fucking deals. They made fat deals in for trademarks and real estate and all sorts of shit when Donald Trump was in office. Yeah, the Republicans are totally in bed with China. Remember when the Republicans tried to use a Chinese spy to testify against Donald Trump or against Joe Biden? Do you remember that? Yeah, his name was like Gal Luft. He was an Israeli citizen who worked for the Chinese government. He was a Chinese spy, and Republicans were going to have him testify and under oath to talk about the supposedly he had information about crimes that would tie Joe Biden to some impeachable offense, but he never had one because he's a Chinese spy. But Republicans were going to use him anyways. So you already know Republicans are on the same side as China. Just like they're on the same side as the Russians. The Russians who are doing these active measures to brainwash Americans so they're not able to defend their own country, to defend democracy. Against what? Against authoritarianism. Okay, let's see. What else do you got to say?
The next stage, of course, is crisis.
Next. The next thing. Remember, it was the three things. He said economy, he said foreign relations, and then what was the last thing he said? Military. It was the military. So that's a couple things. That's a couple things for the military. Remember when the Donald Trump administration surrendered to the Taliban on September 11th? Remember that? You don't remember? Yeah, dude. Mike Pompeo stood with the fucking mullah or whatever leader dude of the Taliban on September 11th in Afghanistan to surrender. Yeah, dude, you don't remember? I can't believe that. So Donald Trump surrendered to the Taliban on September 11th in Afghanistan, and then he set a withdrawal date for like March in after the election, right? Well, understand, Donald Trump never, ever, ever had an intention of leaving office. He never intended to leave office. He wasn't going to leave. He didn't care what the election was going to say. He never intended to leave office. In fact, he tried to overthrow the government when all his schemes failed. He tried to overthrow the government. So, given that Donald Trump never intended to leave office, let's look at the military readiness for the Afghanistan withdrawal. Let's look at it, right? Donald Trump intended to be president after January 2021. He intended to be president. President is commander-in-chief of the military. The commander-in-chief of the military never gave the military orders to withdraw from Afghanistan. Oh, our government made a deal to leave, but Donald Trump never intended to honor that deal. Donald Trump was going to abandon the military in Afghanistan without a deal. They'd be fucking invaders at that point. Like, with no deal, dude. No deal. You're just a bunch of fucking squatters at that point. That's fucked up. Donald Trump didn't give a fuck. He didn't care. He didn't care. He didn't care. He doesn't care about the military, Donald Trump. No way. He was going to abandon the military in Afghanistan while he overthrew the government in America. Yes. It looks fucking disgusting, doesn't it? But that was fully his intent. Fully his intent. So when Joe Biden rolled into office and that deadline rolled up, he's like, okay, guys, let me see what you've done so far. Nothing. You guys haven't done anything because no one told you to do anything. No one told you to withdraw. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. So it was by the amazing ability of the U.S. military that they were able to airlift an entire fucking city out of Afghanistan in 6 days. Dude, they were landing and flying planes every fucking 15 minutes, non-stop, 24/7. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, it was pretty shitty that nothing was really done to prepare, but that's not really Joe Biden. That's on Donald Trump administration, who surrendered to the Taliban. I'm not lying about surrendering on September 11th. They really did that, dudes. They really did that. Donald Trump really surrendered to the Taliban on September 11th. I'm not kidding. Like, Donald Trump, and even though he surrendered and told the Taliban that the U.S. military would be out by this time, he didn't actually intend to do it, and he didn't tell the military to do it. So the military didn't do it, because that's not what they were commanded to do. He was going to leave them there while he overthrew the government in America. That's one way. That's one way in which Donald Trump was going to wreck the U.S. military. The other way, number two, it's not. Remember, Donald Trump is not acting by himself. He has co-conspirators in the U.S. government, the Republicans. There's this Florida man by the name of Tommy Tuberville. He lives in Florida. I forget what town, Santa Ana or something. He lives in Florida. This Florida guy named Tommy Tuberville managed to get himself to become the senator for Alabama. A Florida guy managed to become the senator for Alabama. Like, what? Like, don't you need to live in the state that you reside? Like, how do you represent a state if you don't even live there? How can you be a representative of them if you're not even from there? Like, what? But I don't know, dude. I don't know. Is the voting system of Alabama like legit? I think it's fucked up. I think the voting system of Alabama is not quite right. I think they're trying to fix it, but yeah. At any rate, the voters of Alabama chose this guy from Florida to represent them, represent the state of Alabama. So this coach, he's a high school football coach. Ed Bundy? No, not Ed Bundy. Love and marriage, it's an institute, you can't compare it. Okay, anyways, this Florida guy named Tommy Tuberville, he's a coach, football coach. Tommy Tuberville from Florida, fucking made himself the senator from Alabama, and then he put holds on like hundreds of military promotions. So imagine being promoted at your job. Just imagine, right? Just imagine. Like, hey guy, we think you did a good job. We're going to promote you, right? And you're going to do this. You're going to start doing this job, this harder job. Congratulations on your promotion to a higher position. You got more work to do, right? You got more responsibility, more things to take care of. Right? Obviously, since you got a promotion and you're going to have more responsibility and more things to take care of, obviously we're going to pay you more. Oh, wait, no, we're not. No, this Florida football coach is saying, no, dude, you have to do your job, this extra hard job with extra responsibility. You have to do it without extra pay because this football coach from Florida said so. And he's Republican football coach from Florida said, no, you can't get promoted. You have to do the work anyways, but you don't get the compensation for it. What do you think that does to morale, dude? Are you going to do a good job knowing that you're doing extra work and not getting paid for it? Like, congratulations. Here's your extra work. No extra money, just extra work and responsibility. No, it's going to suck, dude. That's a drag on morale. You're going to feel shitty working for an organization that makes you do extra work and not get you paid for it. Your morale would be shitty. Well, that's what Tommy Tuberville is doing right now to the U.S. military. He put a hold on all these promotions in the military because he has the power as a Republican. So, sure, he can say he's doing it for whatever reason he wants, right? But to Republicans, fascists, authoritarians, the word means nothing. Truth means nothing. Instead, let's look at the real world effects, the real politic effects of what goes down. What are the facts on the ground when it comes to Tommy Tuberville? Tommy Tuberville has degraded the U.S. military. Facts on the ground. The end result is that Tommy Tuberville has eroded the effectiveness of the U.S. military. And who does that serve? The enemies of the United States. No other way around it. Why would Tommy Tuberville do that? Because that's one of the three things you want to do if you want to disrupt and destabilize a nation. You want to disrupt their economy, you want to wreck their foreign relations, and you want to wreck their military. Republicans and Donald Trump have done all three.
Take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy.
think January 6th. He tried to do a violent change in government. Now understand, right? I'm not just making this up. They fully intended to do this. They fully intended. I'll show you after this. Hold on.
You have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely.
Yeah, normalization. That's where the media comes in. Hey, good morning, Swiftly Taken. That's where the media comes in. The media is the agent of normalization. The media is the agent that remember, fascists depend on a technique called false equivalence. False equivalence is when you take two things that are not the same, but you say, yes, they are the same. And since they're the same, what comes out of them is the same as well. Okay. But it's not true because they're not the same thing. But fascists always use it. Anyways, mass media is important in propagating this normalization, this false equivalence. They do it all the time right now with Donald Trump. They are treating Donald Trump as if he's a presidential candidate instead of an insurrection leader. Because that's what Donald Trump is. He's not a legitimate politician. He's literally indicted for leading an insurrection. Well, trying to overthrow the government, which is an insurrection, right? If your government is democracy and you're trying to overthrow the election, the will of the people, yeah, that's an insurrection, you motherfucker. So hey, thank you. Hey, Swiftly Taken. If I say anything that's confusing to you, please let me know. That way I can clarify. All right. It's good to have an audience. So I say, like, Donald Trump had no intention of leaving office after losing the election. How can I say that? Let me show you. I gotta search for it first. Pompeo. Yeah, he had no intention of leaving office. Like, I'm waiting for it to come up. Sorry. Here, let's look down here for a bit. I should make more coffee because I'm about out on my second pot. I need a third pot. Ooh, pretty. You know what? I can't use the shader. I can't use the resource pack emissives in Fabric, Sodium, Iris until there's a mod called Continuity. That is absolutely essential. It's absolutely essential for any of my emissive stuff to work. This emissives that you see now is from the shader pack itself. It's not from it's not coming from the resource pack. So I don't know if it creates a bigger hit on the video card. However, I know that I'm not able to swap out different resource packs to see different people's implementation of emissives. Some people have used lighting differently than other people, and so it looks cool to be able to change. But when you have to use the integrated emissives, you're stuck with what they give you. I like how the Red Stone, like, It was really, really bright when it's strength 15 and really, really dim when it's strength 1. That looks good. There. Oh, I'm getting to Mike Pompeo. Come on, keep looking. It's still doing a search. So I bought an M2 card, but it wasn't really an M2 card. It was actually an SSD card in an M2 format. So I found out it's a lot slower than an M2 card because I can tell by searching. My searches take a lot longer. I know this clip exists because I played it before. You know what? What if I go make coffee while it searches? That way I have something numbing to drink. Let me do that. Okay. So, I've demonstrated ways in which active measures, reflexive control, is a brainwashing technique that is real. It's not a made up thing. It started in the 80s. It wasn't very effective because mass media was tightly controlled in the West. So Russians were unable to really get access to American minds. However, that didn't stop the Russians. They kept refining it against their own people, and they started using it against people of other countries, notably that of Georgia and then of Ukraine. They would purposely send disinformation into the areas they wanted to conquer, and then when the troops arrived, everyone was confused as to what was going on. They were unable to defend themselves or their country because they were confused as to what was happening. They couldn't figure it out. The truth was right there, but they were unable to see it. What's the truth? That Russia is an imperialist nation that was invading illegitimately. They had no basis to do so, but they did so anyways. So then, here I'm back. The coffee is brewing. Mike Pompeo. Donald Trump never had any intention of leaving.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden?
Donald Trump never had any intention of leaving. This is in November. So at this point, the press is going on. The election already happened. Donald Trump lost the election. So now we have a press conference with Mike Pompeo, who is the Secretary of State for Donald Trump, which is a pretty high office. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State too. So Donald Trump has lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. Joe Biden has created a team, a transition team, to help transition smoothly from one administration to another, so there's no disruption in American policy or governance. It's all a smooth deal, smooth transition of power, right? So the election's over and done for, right? Donald Trump is still contesting it, of course. You know, at this point, he's still contesting it. Like, I think he's already lost his 60 court cases. Like, he's not the winner at all, right? He's not even pretending that he lost at this point. So, but it already happened. He already lost. This is in November after the election. His Secretary of State, super high level guy, is now giving a press conference, and the reporter is like, dude, like, election's over. When is Donald Trump's team going to talk to Joe Biden's team about transitioning over to the Biden administration? When they going to do it? And since they haven't done it, like, at what point does this become a problem? That's the question that's going to be asked.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration.
So he just straight up denies it. Do you see? through that is Mike Pompeo wielding power to deny reality. Do you see that? He's just gonna fucking power through it. That's all he's gonna do. He's like, so he was asked straight up. So at what point it's like y'all haven't like fucking contacted the Biden team about transitioning. At one point does this become a problem? And Mike Pompeo says we're gonna go right into the second Trump administration. What? It's not like Mike Pompeo doesn't know there was just an election. It's not like Mike Pompeo doesn't know that Donald Trump lost the election. It's not like any of that. But he's acting as if Donald Trump is not leaving. And this is November. He's already acting as if Donald Trump is not leaving. November.
Right. We're ready.
So we're ready. In other words, they've got this plan already planned out, right? You know, it wasn't like at a drop of a hat that they decided to create a slate of fake electors. It wasn't like they just decided to like magically make thousands of people appear at the Capitol on January 6th. It wasn't like magic. They had a long plan ahead of time. How come? Because it's already been done before in other countries. It's already been done before in other countries. It's like a playbook that they use, the fascist playbook. They're just running the playbook at that point. So yeah, at this point, Mike Pompeo is telling the press, telling the American people, the Secretary of State is telling the American people that there will be no election, that the results of the election don't matter, that we're going into a second Trump administration, and that they're ready. They're ready to implement it already. I'm not making it up. I'm not lying. It's not hyperbole. The only way you would be unable to see what's going on is if you are brainwashed. And as if you've had Russian active measures put upon you and you are unable, and your perception of reality has been altered to such an extent that you are unable to come to a sensible conclusion despite the abundance of evidence. That's the only way, right? It's from his own fucking mouth. It's not me, it's his own people saying it. And then we know what happened. They lost every court case. They lost every challenge. When they exhausted all due process, they still tried to overthrow the government on January 6th. It was always their plan. Listen.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be.
Yeah, dude, the world is watching. What he means is Putin is watching. Remember, for the elites, the only ones that really matter, for the elites, the only ones that really matter are the elites. When Elon Musk says we're going to the moon, he means the elites. He doesn't mean us. We're nothing. To Elon Musk, we're nothing to him. We're not the elites. To the elites, the world is the elites, not the rest of us. Like time and time again, they tell us that. Remember that time I broke down the Elon Musk tweet in which he said woke is a threat to humans, and what he really meant was the awareness of white supremacy is a threat to the oligarchs, which is him. Anyways, Mike Pompeo is the same way, right? The world is watching. When he says the world is watching, what Mike Pompeo means is Putin is watching. Because Putin is watching to see if his investment is going to pay off. He invested in Donald Trump to overthrow the U.S. government, and he's looking to see if it paid off.
Electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful.
So I think the idea by him saying that, look at how funny he said that. Look how look how funny he said that.
Is the State
President who's in office on January transition necessary? The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary.
The transition necessary. The transition necessary, not the Biden transition who won the election, but the transition necessary, the necessary transition. You can change those two words around. It's not the transition necessary, but the necessary transition. What kind of transition is like? There's only one transition that's necessary from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. Why are you being all like quiet about it? Like, what's the deal with that? Why won't he outright say it? Because he already told us he expects a second Trump term. So when he says the necessary transition, he means the transition into fascism. That's what he means. He fucking tells you, man. He's telling you. It's not me telling you. It's him.
We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration.
Right? He's telling you right now, it doesn't matter. We're going to have a second Trump administration. He fucking tells you that democracy is over. He's telling you. Mike Pompeo is telling you democracy is over. Fucking Mike Pompeo. Fuck that guy.
All right. We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all.
Yeah. Vladimir Putin is watching what's taking place. When I say Vladimir Putin is watching, why do I say that? What do I mean? And what if I can find it real quick? Okay. I'm going to open this in a new window. Open location. Okay, and then I'll open another one. Ooh, that's good. Then I'm going to try it like this. Try a different program. Red Stone Lapis Lazuli. Okay, now what am I looking for here? Search. For this one, what the fuck? I can't get to it. There it is. For this one, I'm looking for Donald Trump makes the bargain with Russia. Russia, if you're listening. Oh. Oh, wow, this is way quicker. I should have been doing it this way. I gotta sort through it, but... No, I gotta find it. No, it's not so easy. Well, okay, anyways. I have another one. I have another one of Donald Trump saying Russia, if you're listening, and he's like talking, he talks directly to Russia, like it's so funny. Yeah, if that's right. Donald Trump says Russia, if you're listening, find those Hillary Clinton emails and I'll reward you. Like he says it straight up, man. I can't believe it. So like it's clear, right? Donald Trump and his allies are fucking traitors for sure. Fuck that guy. This was, yeah, I got all mixed up. Okay, what's this? Nothing. Let me keep going. So Donald Trump was trying to do it.
I think he's got some woke policies. I like CQ. I've had him in my office several times back when.
That's the Florida dude. That's the coach. Remember the coach that I was telling you about that was like degrading the military on behalf of Putin? Remember that coach from the Florida guy? Tuberville, that's him. That's him right there.
He was chief of the Air Force.
But you voted against him.
He's a good person. He believes in what he's doing. You have to believe in what you're doing.
So he's explaining why he's blocking this guy's promotion. He's explaining why he's blocking the military's promotion. This one guy is blocking the promotion of the military for like hundreds of military promotions. And he's explaining why, for one guy, one person, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, I don't know. One guy, he's explaining why.
Now he doesn't really have any authority other than giving advice to the president. He's a general, but he's not really over the Army, Air Force, Navy.
So yeah, all of them were all the people who were promoted overwhelmingly by Congress, bipartisan. This is all bipartisan votes, strong bipartisan votes. All of Congress says yes, let's promote these people. But this one dude from Florida, Tommy Tuberville, is blocking it. Why?
He has to just give information and advice to the president. I think he'll do a good job, but I heard him say a few things that really didn't fit with me in terms.
Oh, but he said some things. You're blocking it because he said some things. Oh, you think he's a good guy. We just saw a graphic that showed that he was approved overwhelmingly by Congress, bipartisan. He's a good guy, right? But he said some things. Oh, really, Tommy Tuberville, high school coach? What did he say, Florida man? What did he say? Tell us.
In terms of making our military better and better, you got to remember, we have a free country.
What was it, though, specifically, Senator?
Well,
right. What did he say? Since that's the thing that made you block all these promotions, what specifically did he say? When you ask them to be specific, the truth comes out. Oh no. They always try to avoid that, right? White supremacists always try to avoid the truth, saying what the truth is, because there's no defense. That's why they always use insinuations. See, did you see how he insinuated everything? He's insinuated the whole time, but he never outright said anything until finally, the one question. What specifically did he say that caused you put this block on him?
We have a free country, or we have things that we need to do to make sure that we can uphold, and we can't do that with.
So we have to make sure that there are things that we can uphold. What are those things that we have to make sure that we can uphold? Who's this we that you're talking about? You're supposed to represent the United States, but I suspect when you make those general references, you're not talking about the United States. You have a specific audience in mind when you make those generalizations. Let's go back again.
That really didn't fit with me in terms of making our military information and advice to the president. I think he'll do a good job, but I heard him say a few things that really didn't fit with me in terms.
Oh, that's why. Because he said a few things that really didn't fit with you. Okay, good to know. So this guy whose promotion approved by the vast majority of Congress, and you think is a good guy, and you even said himself he doesn't really have all that much like sway on things. He just advises the president. You said so yourself. You just fucking undermined your entire argument. But he said a few things that didn't fit with you. That's why you're gonna block him.
In terms of making our military better and better, you got to remember.
In terms of making our military better and better. See how he uses insinuation? Like, he's a good guy. He's a good guy, but he said a few things in terms of that didn't fit with me, in terms of making our military better and better. Well, what do you mean, dude? That's pretty vague. Oh, so you're gonna block this guy's promotion, overwhelmingly approved by Congress, because he said a few things that didn't fit with you in terms of making our military better and better? That's pretty fucking vague. It's like you're hiding something, dude. You're being evasive on purpose. What are you fucking hiding? Spit it out, yo.
Remember, we have a free country.
What was it, though, specifically, Senator?
Well, we have a free
country. Uh-oh. So, who's this we that he's talking about, right? It's supposed to be the United States. But at this point, he stops talking about the United States, and he starts addressing a very specific demographic. Listen.
Country, or we have things that we need to do to make sure that we can uphold, and we can't do that without.
There are things that we have to make sure that we can uphold, and we can't do that. What? Do you understand? Can you hear that he changed his audience? Can you hear that? Let's go back.
He'll do a good job, but I heard him say a few things that really didn't fit with me in terms of making our military better and better. You got to remember, we have a free country.
What was it, though, specifically, Senator?
Well, we have a free country, or we have things that we need to do to make sure that we can uphold, and we can't do that without a great, hard, strong military.
I like the way he enunciates those H's. Uphold, hard military. He's speaking to someone.
Now, I heard some things that he talked about race and things that he wanted to mix into the military.
Race mixed race mixing. That's what he heard. I heard him say some things about race and mixing. And there's certain traditions, values he wants to uphold. Hard military. I mean, those are dog whistles, dude. He's addressing his white supremacist constituents. And he's saying he's blocking this dude's promotion because this dude is okay with I guess gays in the military, right? Because that's what it's insinuating. When he says hard military, he's insinuating that women and gay people and whatever else, right? Whatever else, because you have to understand it's in our military interest to have as much diversity as possible. Understand it. Get it in your brain. It's in our military interest to have as much diversity as possible. Let me give you an example. Alan Turing. I think that's his name. Alan Turing was a code breaker in World War II in England. And Alan Turing was the person who cracked the Enigma code, the Enigma machine. The Nazis had 3 machines they used to encode because everyone back then was sending out their messages over the radio waves, right? And anyone with an antenna can pick up those radio waves and listen and write down what you say. Anybody, right? So the Germans, the Nazis created this machine called the Enigma machine. They only had 3 of them, and maybe they had more. I don't know, but they used these machines to encode their messages, and the code was supposed to be unbreakable. There's no way you could figure out what they were actually saying unless you had another machine. You had to have the machine in order to figure out what they were saying. You couldn't do it otherwise, right? So the Allies were like, oh God, do we really need to get one of these machines so we can decode their messages and figure it out? Well, Alan Turing was a English code breaker, and that dude, without the Enigma machine, he figured out the code. He figured out the code that the Nazis were using to send their messages. That gave the Allies the ability to basically eavesdrop, because Like the Nazis didn't know that their code machine had been broken. They might have suspected, but they didn't know. So they kept talking as if no one was watching them. And the Allies were listening the entire time and planning things to make sure to achieve victory. So Alan Turing, by himself, saved thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. Like, do we have to go into millions? Like, I don't even know. Like, not only did he save the lives of troops, both German and Allied, or Nazi and Allied, not only did he do that, but he saved all the civilians who were getting bombed in London. Well, everywhere, right? Because that ended the war sooner. Like, he saved millions of people. Well, turned out that Alan Turing was gay. He was gay. And when the military, or when the people found out, when the government found out in England, what do they do for their war hero? They fucking castrated him. They used chemical castration to fuck up his brain. That's what they did. And then as a result of that, he became very depressed and he killed himself. The guy saved how many untold lives by cracking the military code? Not because he was just like every other like military fucking dude out there, but because he was himself. He was different. And because that difference wasn't snuffed out right away, whatever difference it was made it so that he was able to crack the Enigma code and save thousands and thousands of lives and end the war earlier. Why would you want to like stop that? Why would you want to eliminate that from your military? The potential for unimaginable good. Why would you want to end that? Tommy Tuberville is a bad guy, dude. And when he's talking about the white supremacist ideology. You can hear him switch. You can hear him switch to when he's messaging his white supremacist base, because he uses little dog whistles, so they know that he's talking to them. Just like Donald Trump used his code word, his little switch to talk to Russia. I gotta find that now that I've been talking about it.
Let me tell you something. Our military is not an equal opportunity employer. We're looking for the best of best.
Yeah, dude. So what he's trying to do is saying that he doesn't like this whole race mixing. Man, this guy's a white supremacist. He's a Confederate in every way possible. He's an enemy of the United States. That's Tommy Tuberville. He lives in Florida. He's a Florida man, so he's not legitimate. He's acting to help our enemies to initiate and implement the active measures against the United States. And he's a co-conspirator for the insurrection. Yeah, the guy is terrible. The state he represents has been gerrymandered so that it's not an accurate representation of the people. Oh, it's awful. But we're fighting back. It's not over yet. So, this whole thing that I've been telling you about for that Russia is using this technique, right? Remember I was telling you Russia has this mind control technique they've been using, that they used it in the 80s, that we learned about it in the 80s from Yuri Bermanov. We learned about it in the 80s, but that didn't mean they stopped doing it in the 80s. They kept using it. And this is like the first example of them using it against another country. So remember, Georgia declared independence from Russia, but Russia didn't like that, right? They wanted to keep having control over this country. So what they did was they used little green men to invade both this area and this area. And they used their media to send confusing messages into Georgia to confuse both the military and the people. So they didn't know what was going on, and they didn't understand that they were being invaded. And it worked. It worked. Right now, even in this day, Russia controls this area and this area right now. So in the 90s, this is what Russia did. They used their information war that we learned about in the 80s to help use a military attack against Georgia. It was used together in hybrid warfare. They used both things in hybrid warfare. Then remember, they didn't just do it down there. They also did it over here. So now you're going to Ukraine. In the aughts, Russia installed a puppet president by the name of Yanukovych or something like that. He was kicked out by the Ukrainian people because the Ukrainian people wanted democracy. Well, in response, Russia invaded and took over all this side of Ukraine. So they did so. The way they did so was by hybrid warfare. They used little green men. They used Russian troops and equipment, but they took off the insignias, so they wasn't identified as Russian troops. And those Russian troops crossed the border into Ukraine and took up positions. Then inside Ukraine, they played propaganda. They played misinformation to the people in eastern Ukraine to confuse them as to what was going on and what was happening. And then they did that, and then they used Russia to broadcast to the whole world that, oh, this isn't a Russian military operation. This is their own people doing it. It's not us doing it. It's their own people. Well, back then, the West didn't understand like information warfare, so we didn't. Look, I don't know what we could have done to stop them from doing that. Imposed costs, I guess, not made it free, but that's what they did. They took over eastern Ukraine and Crimea. Then, when Zelensky refused to bow to Russia, and when Donald Trump was removed from power, so that avenue was taken away from them. Putin had no choice but to invade Ukraine because all those other avenues of corruption had failed. So now we're like 2 years into the war, and Ukraine is turning the tide with Western help. That's why Russia is using their active measures again, using their intermediaries to message to their demoralized people to stop supporting Ukraine because it's working too good against Russia. So remember, there are multiple avenues through which the Republicans are trying to implement Yuri's three modes of attack. Remember, Yuri says there's 3 modes of attack.
Well, you spoke several times.
Common sense. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. What matters is essentials. Economy, foreign relations, defense systems.
Economy, foreign relations, defense systems. Economy, foreign relations, defense systems. We just heard Tommy Tuberville sabotage the U.S. military because of white supremacy. You heard it, right? It's not me saying it. Tommy Tuberville himself said it, and it was all you could hear when he switched to talking to the white supremacists. And he used the code words of race mixing and equal opportunity employer type thing. He's totally dog whistling to his white supremacist base. That's what he's about. And so white supremacists are also authoritarians, just like Putin. So just like China, they're all teamed up. Whatever happens to Ukraine is also going to happen to Taiwan. So understand that. So Yuri tells us the essentials are the military, the foreign relations, and the economy. We just heard how Republicans are attacking the military. We just heard how Republicans are attacking foreign relations, because by leaving Ukraine defenseless, they're signaling to China that they would also leave Taiwan defenseless. So listen, it's not just me, right? This is 1.50 minus 21. I don't. Listen to Kevin McCarthy himself, right? No, this one.
But the American border matters, and more Americans are dying on our border than Americans are dying in Ukraine.
That's a great point. Why are more Americans dying at our border than Americans dying in Ukraine? Oh, that's because there are no Americans in Ukraine. There are no American troops in Ukraine. There are 0 American troops in Ukraine. Like, you might have volunteers, but, you know, what are you going to do? It's their freedom. They can do what they want. But there's no military, no U.S. military. So Kevin McCarthy acknowledges that there are no Americans in Ukraine. Kevin McCarthy acknowledges it. I heard a demoralized person, two different demoralized people, Americans, came up to me and told me that they didn't want, that they were sick and tired of American troops dying in Ukraine. And then I'm like, dude, there are no American troops in Ukraine. 0. Why do you have this fake idea in your head that there are American troops in Ukraine? Like, get that fucking out of your head, dude. It's being used to manipulate you. People get real emotional when they think American lives are in danger. No Americans are in Ukraine fighting for the U.S. military. None. Kevin McCarthy just fucking told you, right? Now, that's the other good point he makes. Why are Americans dying at the border, the southern border? That's a good point. Why are Americans dying at the southern border? Let's keep that in mind. But let's keep going, right?
So you are explicitly right now linking any Ukraine aid vote to a border bill. It won't be a standalone Ukraine bill.
I am telling you.
That's true. It's true. It's true. Kevin McCarthy said that any vote that he wants to do to pass a bill to keep the government open has to remove aid to Ukraine. That's what he's saying. Kevin McCarthy says Putin. It's in Putin's interest if Ukraine stops getting aid from the United States. So I will shut down the American government in order to stop aid from going to Ukraine to help Putin out.
That the American border matters, and that.
Now so here's that thing, right? The American borders matters. Why haven't the Republicans done anything to solve the problem? They have control of the House. Why haven't they passed any bill to address the problem? That tells you, that gets to my whole point with this. The whole modus operandus of Republicans. The whole modus operandus of Republicans. The Republicans create a problem, then they blame Democrats for the problem, and then they obstruct any of the attempts of Democrats to fix the problem. You can use that formula for a number of things. Right now, Kevin McCarthy is using it for the border. Why is it that we have a problem with the border? Because the Americans haven't passed any comprehensive border reform in decades. We haven't fucking fixed the border in decades. Why? Like, we haven't made any changes. Like, the government's been paralyzed. Why has the government been paralyzed? So, like, everyone agrees. Everybody agrees that we need to reform the border, the U.S. southern border. We need to make reforms. Everybody agrees. No one's denying that we want to stop drugs from coming into the United States. No one's denying that we want to stop like bad people drug cartel members. We don't want drug cartel members coming into the United States to set up business up here in the United States. No one wants that. Nobody wants guns from the United States to come into Mexico, right? Nobody wants that. We're all in agreement here, okay? Like, let's not pretend that there's a big divide in Americans between like what needs to happen. 99% of Americans are all in agreement on these points. We want to stop bad people from coming into the United States. We want to stop drugs from coming up into the United States. We want to stop guns from going down into Mexico. We all want these things to happen. We want a safe and secure border. We do not want to separate parents from their children. Unlike Donald Trump and the Trump administration, what they did. That's fucked up. That's immoral and unethical. We don't want that to happen. But for those other things, we are in full agreement. And we want refugees to be able to come to the United States for sanctuary. Yes, of course, dude. Of course. How could you not? Our ancestors themselves, some of our ancestors themselves fled their home country from a tyrannical government for the promise of freedom offered by America. How can you deny if our ancestors, if our founding fathers themselves did this, how could you deny it to anyone else? How? By denying it to other people, you deny it to your own founding fathers. You cannot do it. You cannot deny people coming to this country for refugees, as refugees. So we have this problem. We need to take care of this problem at the southern border. But for some reason, it can't be fixed. Why is this reason? Because Republicans block all attempts at reform. Democrats have had bills, but they always get blocked by Republicans, either in the Senate or they just don't do it in that when they have control of the House. They just don't even pass it. It just doesn't get done. Remember when they controlled the government for like 2 years? They didn't pass anything. Remember when Donald Trump first took power and he controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency? The only bill they passed was a tax cut for billionaires. That was it. They reformed the tax code. That was it. My coffee. So Republicans create the problem of immigration. By shutting down the government, the Republicans would have succeeded in reducing the number of border guards on our border. In effect, by shutting down the government, they would have exacerbated the very problem they claim is the fault of Democrats. So that's one way. The other way that Republicans create a problem and then blame Democrats is through the economy. Let me show you. Republicans, all the time, cut. They want to cut. They cut programs for the neediest people, the poorest people, all the social programs. And they also cut taxes for the richest people. And they provide tax breaks for the richest people. So, what that does is creates a deficit between the money you bring in and the money you put out. Because you don't really save money by cutting the social programs. All you've done is you've shifted it. You shifted the money you save by cutting social programs goes to pay for the tax cuts for the rich. So you haven't actually saved any money. All you've done is you've lowered the amount of money the government takes in. So now you blow up a deficit. You start creating a deficit. But while you have power, you don't talk about it as Republicans. The moment you lose power and you don't have control of the presidency, then the Republicans all of a sudden start talking about the deficit. They'll talk about like, oh, we need to cut these social programs, deficit. But they're the ones who created the deficit by cutting revenue, by cutting taxes for the rich. They're the ones who made the deficit. Now, you want to say, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit. No, guys, no. Listen, when Obama was the president, he explicitly went to the Republicans and said, look, guys, you can cut Social Security all you want, and the only thing I want in return is to get rid of the debt ceiling. That's the only thing I want to do. Just get rid of the debt ceiling, and then you can cut Social Security, and you can do whatever you want. And I was super, super angry at the reason why I remember this is because I got really, really mad at Obama. I got fucking pissed at Obama for offering that, because I thought for sure the Republicans would snap that up. They would cut Social Security like in a heartbeat. That's the thing they hate the most. I thought, that's exactly what they'll do. Obama offered to let them cut Social Security however they wanted, as long as they got rid of the debt ceiling. And Republicans refused. They refused to do it. Oh, I couldn't believe it. Why would they refuse to do it? They get to cut Social Security, the dream thing. Why would they refuse to do it? Because the debt ceiling acts like a club. It's a thing they could use to beat up Democratic senators. What they do is they grow the debt as big as they possibly can by cutting taxes for the rich. Then when they lose power, like they use the threat of the debt ceiling to force concessions from the Democrats to do stuff they want. They say like, oh, look at this giant debt. Like, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to use it to crash the economy. So they create the problem, the giant debt, by not taxing rich people. Then when they lose power, they use the big debt they created as a club to create a crisis. And then they use the crisis to try to get concessions out of the Democrats. And if the Democrats try to fix it, then the Republicans will block them. So it works like that with the border. It works like that with the debt ceiling and with the with keeping the government open. They create the problem, and then they blame They try to blame the Democrats for it. So here's Kevin McCarthy admitting, number one, that no Americans are in Ukraine. No American soldiers are in Ukraine. Number one. Number two, he admits that Republicans there's a border problem, but Republicans control the House, and instead of addressing the border problem, he's trying to shut down the government by linking the border with Ukraine. Why? With aid to Ukraine. He wants to stop aid going to Ukraine because it would be beneficial for Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is a fellow authoritarian. They share the same worldview. Kevin McCarthy, white supremacists, and Vladimir Putin share the same worldview, and China share the same worldview of totalitarianism and authoritarianism. And Kevin McCarthy understands that Ukraine is a signal to China that whatever happens to Ukraine, that China can expect to happen to Taiwan. So Kevin McCarthy is demonstrating to China that he would cut off any aid to Taiwan if China were to invade. Because that's what he's doing to Ukraine right now. And they're linked. They're the same thing. Don't forget it.
That is our priority, to make sure we secure that.
So that has to move first.
I'm going to make sure that the weapons are provided for Ukraine, but they're not going to get some big package if the border is not secure.
So they're not going to get the weapons unless the border is secure. He's going to shut down the border guard and allow people to come over, allow like whatever to cross the border. He's going to shut down the border guard unless the border is secure. You see? Kevin McCarthy says he's going to shut down the border unless the Republicans make sure the border is secure. So first he's going to shut down the government. That way the border is not secure. Then Kevin McCarthy says Ukraine isn't going to get weapons until Republicans do something to secure the borders. And they're not gonna. Ta-da! Kevin McCarthy, guys. All right.
But you haven't figured out yet the vehicle through which to move that Ukraine aid or a date by which to do it.
We will work with people in need, but the one thing the
We will work with people in need. No, dude, he's got nothing. He's got nothing.
White House has to understand they better be prepared to secure American border.
The White House, you're the one who's going to shut down the government and shut down the border guard. What's the White House supposed to do if you shut down the government? Ah! Attacked. Viciously. Ah! Run away. Okay. All right, let's continue. So that's one way in which the Republicans are attacking our foreign relations. What did Yuri say? It only matters about the essentials: economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. So we see how they're wrecking our defense systems. We see how Republicans are wrecking our economy, and we see how Republicans are wrecking our foreign relations. So here's the next one.
Most of it in the press probably thought we would have shut down yesterday too, but no, we did not.
Were you confident we wouldn't shut down?
I was confident I could get something on the floor to make sure the option that we would not.
So he wasn't, right? He's like, I can get something on the floor. I don't know if it would pass. Ah, what a loser. Ah, he's a loser, dude. He's a loser. Kevin McCarthy's a loser. He can't do anything.
Our military. Well, I wasn't sure it was going to pass. You want to know why? Because the Democrats tried to do everything they can not to let it pass. They did
Democrats were the ones who voted for this
in a
larger number than Republicans to keep the continuing resolution alive.
Did you watch the floor yesterday?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
90 Republicans voted against it.
Okay.
So listen, 90 Republicans voted against the continuing resolution that kept the government going. Republicans were ready to shut down the government. Republicans were ready to shut down the government because Ukraine was going to get aid. And who saved the day? Who saved the day? Democrats. More Democrats voted for the bill to keep the government open than Republicans. And why is Kevin McCarthy the leader? Why is he the leader? He's got nothing, dude. He's done. Forget him. Okay. So 1, 2. What else do I got here? Oh, 3. Okay. Remember how back in the day Joe Biden was given an interview about how the Americans got Ukraine to kick out this dirty prosecutor, Viktor Shokin. Remember that? I did it a couple shows ago. If you don't remember, let me know. But yeah, the Americans through Joe Biden told the Ukrainian government, look, we're not going to give you this $1 billion deal unless you kick out dirty prosecutor by the name of Viktor Shokin, because Viktor Shokin is blocking the investigation into Burisma. So the government at that time said, "Fine, we'll kick this guy out, and then and then we'll get our $1 billion guarantee." So Republicans are trying to lie about that thing, and say that Joe Biden is corrupt somehow. I don't know how, but here, check this out.
I had a chance to talk to Viktor Shokin, a man who says he was friends of yours. Who you?
Okay, so Poroshenko was the president after the Ukrainians kicked out the Russian puppet. The guy before Poroshenko was like Yanukovych or something. Man, I need to pull up that map again. So bad at this. Oh wait, I can just look at the last week. No, I can't. No, I can't. Biden, Burisma. Yeah, it's like right there. Okay. So Yanukovych on the timeline here, this is 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. Yanukovych is the dirty guy from Russia who was the prime minister of Ukraine. He got kicked out by the Ukrainian people. And the next guy that came in was Poroshenko. So that was who the Ukrainian people picked after they kicked out the Russian puppet. During this time was when Joe Biden came in to do his bragging. You remember that?
Convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, "No," I said, "I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion." They said, "You have no authority. You're not the president." The president said. I said, "Call him." I said, "I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion." I said, "You're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here." And I think it was 6 hours. I looked. I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
So you look at my little map here. That was about this time, 2017, or from 2015 through 2015 and early 2016. Domestic and international pressure, including from the IMF, the EU, and the EBRD, built for Shokin to be removed from office. The Obama administration withheld $1 billion in loan guarantees to pressure the Ukrainian government to remove Shokin from office. That's what this whole thing's about. So dude, I hate this new Windows thing.
I had a chance to talk to Viktor Shokin, a man who says he was friends of yours, who you asked to come back and help out during the transition after the previous regime. Here's what he said on why he was fired by you. Listen.
Poroshenko fired me at the insistence of the then Vice President Biden because I was investigating Burisma. There were no complaints whatsoever, no problems with how I was performing at my job, but because pressure was repeatedly put on President Poroshenko, that is what ended up in him firing me.
Is that why he got fired, because of the $1 billion and the former vice president, now president?
First of all, this is the completely crazy person. This is something wrong with him. Second,
this is
there is
Poroshenko,
no one single
this guy
word
here.
of truth. And third, I hate the idea to make any comments and to make any intervention in the American election. We have very much enjoyed the bipartisan support, and please do not use such person like Shokin to undermine the trust between bipartisan support in Ukraine.
Right. What do you mean? He's not your friend?
I don't see him maybe 4 years or something at all, and hate the idea to have him because he play very dirty game, unfortunately.
Okay, so that is not true. He didn't get fired because of Joe Biden.
He was fired because of his own statement, and if he do not do that, next day Ukrainian parliament will fire him with that.
All right, Mr. President, thanks so much. Stay safe. Best of luck along the way in this counterinsurgency. Hope you make some big progress through the.
So his name is Poroshenko, and he's confirming that Shokin's a liar. Whatever Shokin said he was lying. Shokin's on Team Oligarch. Shokin was a dirty prosecutor that was not investigating Burisma. And they had to get rid of him. And this is the president, the ex-president of Ukraine, telling Fox News that Shokin's a liar. So, yeah, you can't trust them. Okay. So they're trying to use Shokin, Burisma to go after Hunter Biden. That's why that's significant. And they're going after Hunter Biden because they want to go after Joe Biden. But they have no evidence. There's zero proof. Like, there's zero proof.
Have you ever heard them say "if" since we've been sitting here for I don't know how long?
Yes, I've been.
Okay, so remember, Republicans are all about hypotheticals. They don't actually care about actual, what's actually there. They're about hypotheticals because hypotheticals allows them to create insinuations. If you use hypotheticals, then you can create insinuations. It's like, this is like weaving magic, guys. Come on, it's not that hard. Everyone can do it. So what they're doing is they're using hypotheticals. Republicans use hypotheticals to create insinuations. If this is true, then what if this is true? Then this amazing thing could be true. What if this could be true? Then it means this, and that means this. What if Joe Biden were actually connected to Burisma? What if then it would be a huge scandal, and Joe Biden would have to be impeached, and we'd have to remove all his people, and then all his policies would be suspect, and then we'd have to go after everyone who's trying to protect him. But it's all based on a what if. Is Joe Biden actually dirty? No, there's nothing there. You have no proof. You have no evidence. You have nothing. There's nothing there. But you can't build insinuations on nothing. You can't insinuate anything on the truth. Like you can't. How do you insinuate Joe Biden is a criminal if you just go on the truth? You can't. Because logically it follows that if you have no evidence of Joe Biden being a criminal, that means Joe Biden's probably not a criminal. Logically, if you follow the truth, logically speaking, right? But if your goal is not the truth, if your goal is to insinuate, yeah, dude, you'll do hypotheticals all day. So that's what Republicans do. It's always a potentially. It's always a potentially. It's never actual. It's always potentially. An if. Not actual, not is, but an if. If it were. So they did this entire impeachment hearing. This entire hearing with Rep. Jasmine Crockett. This is who's talking right now. They did this entire hearing, the Republicans did this entire hearing in order to present evidence that Joe Biden is corrupt, and they didn't have anything. All they had were hypotheticals in the form of if.
Have you ever heard them say "if" since we've been sitting here for I don't know how long?
Yes, I've I've been taking a tally.
Oh, okay. Can you show us? Can you tell us what the tally is?
More than 35 times, the Republican witnesses and Republican members of the committee have used the word if.
Thank you so much for that. Because honestly, if they would continue to say if or Hunter and we were playing a drinking game, I would be drunk by now. Because I promise you, they have not talked about the subject of this, which would be the president. But let me tell you something that was so disturbing as I walked in to this chamber today. As I prepared, I said, what is the crime? Because when you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about high crimes or misdemeanors. And I can't seem to find the crime. And honestly, no one has testified of what crime they believe the president of the United States has committed. But when we start talking about things that look like evidence, they want to act like they blind. They don't know what this is.
She's holding up pictures of the boxes of secrets that Donald Trump had stored at Mar-a-Lago in the bathroom and on the stage.
These are our national secrets, looks like in the shitter to me. This looks like more evidence of our national secrets, say on a stage at Mar-a-Lago. When we're talking about somebody that's committed high crimes, it's at least indictments. Let's say 32 counts related to unauthorized retention of national security secrets, 7 counts related to obstructing the investigation, 3 false statements, 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States, falsifying business records, conspiracy to defraud the United States, 2 counts related to efforts to obstruct the vote certification proceedings, 1 count of conspiracy to violate civil rights, 23 counts related to forgery or false document statements, 8 counts related to soliciting, and I could go on because he's got 91 counts pending right now. But I will tell you what the president has been guilty of. He has unfortunately been guilty of loving his child unconditionally, and that is the only evidence that they have brought forward. And honestly, I hope and pray that my parents love me half as much as he loves his child. Until they find some evidence, we need to get back to the people's work, which means keeping this government open so that people don't go hungry in the streets of the United States. And I will yield. Have you ever heard them?
Wow. She's right. She's right. She is totally right. There was the Republicans had a hearing. The Republicans held a hearing, an impeachment hearing, a hearing to impeach Joe Biden. At this impeachment hearing, they had 0 evidence. They had 0 evidence of any crime. They never made any accusations of any crime. They had no evidence. All they had were hypotheticals. It gets worse. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rep. Ocasio-Cortez, accused Republicans of making up evidence in the Biden hearing. Republicans, this is a story by who? This is a, I'll link to it eventually, I hope. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee called 3 witnesses. Democrats 1. And in the Atlantic, or in the Guardian, I mean. Ocasio-Cortez questioned the Republican witness first. Turning to Jonathan Turley, a law professor at George Washington University and a well-known conservative commentator, she said, "In your testimony today, are you presenting any first-hand witness account of crimes committed by the President of the United States?" He replied, "No, I am not," said Turley, who has already made headlines by saying he did not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment. But the Republicans are pushing ahead anyways. Ocasio-Cortez asked the same question of Eileen O'Connor, a former assistant attorney general in the Justice Department Tax Division, who worked for Donald Trump's transition team and is a member of the right-wing Federalist Society. "No, I'm not," said O'Connor, who was also called out during the hearing for omitting the word Hunter when she referred to the title of a piece she wrote for the Washington Street Journal in July, namely, "You'd go to prison for what Hunter Biden did." Ocasio-Cortez asked the same question of Bruce Dubinsky, a Forsnick accountant. As the third and final Republican witness in this hearing, have you in your testimony presented any first-hand witness account of crimes committed by the President of the United States? I have not, he said. Ocasio-Cortez said she would assume the same of the sole witness called by the Democrats, Michael J. Gerdhart, a University of North Carolina law professor. He said, I am not a fact witness. Correct. In other words, at this hearing, intended on presenting evidence to support the impeachment of Joe Biden, Republicans actually had no evidence whatsoever. And they could not say what crime they were investigating. They couldn't say. They couldn't do it. They had nothing. Because why? Because remember, just like how Donald Trump, remember in his impeachment, his first impeachment, Donald Trump wanted Zelensky to announce an investigation into the Bidens. It didn't actually have to happen. He just wanted the announcement. It's to make the insinuations. Same thing with the Republicans with the Biden impeachment. They don't need an actual crime. They don't need actual evidence. They're not interested in truth. What they're interested in is the headlines from which they can make insinuations. And it works really good, right? It works really good. I've met Republicans who turn incandescent with rage by the mere mention of Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi. You can't even talk to them because they turn incandescent with rage. They've been conditioned to have an emotional response to just the names. You don't even have to talk about anything. Just the name, saying the name, creates a conditioned response. So, yeah, but there's no evidence of it. All they want is the insinuation so they can make headlines out of it and sell news clips to the base on Fox News. That's all. That's all. It's that ugly.
Can everyone on the Oversight Committee say the same thing? Will members of the Oversight Committee please raise your hand if you believe both Hunter and Trump should be held accountable for any of the indictments against them, if convicted by a jury of their peers?
All right. So we're at this. Oh shit. This is at an Oversight Committee meeting, and remember, in the House. In the House, Republicans control everything. They control the topic, they control the committees, and they control the topics of the committees because they control the chair. So the topic of this meeting is to impeach Joe Biden. That's the topic of the meeting, impeach Joe Biden. But they have no crimes against Joe Biden. So what the Republicans are trying to do is they're trying to tie Hunter Biden to Joe Biden. That way, if they can get Hunter Biden on any kind of crime, they can insinuate a connection between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and then take down Joe Biden with that. So that's the intent of the meeting. But it's not actually going that direction because every one of their witnesses have all agreed that there's no evidence of a crime committed by Joe Biden. So now this Democratic representative is saying, well, hey, let's show let's show the good faith of Republicans. Let's show the good faith of our representatives. He said, if either Hunter Biden or Donald Trump, both of whom are indicted, both of these guys are indicted, Hunter Biden and Donald Trump are both indicted. Can you say that either one of them should serve time, should be punished if they are found guilty of violating law? Should either one, doesn't matter. Hunter Biden, okay. Donald Trump, okay. Should these individuals be held accountable if they broke the law and are found guilty by the U.S. government? And you can look for yourself right here. Let's look for yourself. all the Democrats present all raised their hand. They're saying that if Hunter Biden is found guilty in a court of law, he should be punished. That's what they're saying. And if Donald Trump is found guilty in a court of law, he should be punished. They're raising their hand. Look on the Republican side. Republicans are saying, if Hunter Biden is guilty of a crime, he should be punished. No, they don't think so. Republicans don't think so. If Donald Trump is found guilty of a crime, he should be punished. No, Republicans don't think so. So Republicans can say all this shit about Hunter Biden, but they don't actually want him indicted. They don't actually want him to go down. They don't. Because if he does, then they lose fodder. They need him in the news for an insinuation machine. Like once he's out of the news, once he's in prison, they can't use him anymore. Like they can try, but it's not going to really work because he's in prison. Well, they can go after Joe Biden then, because that's what Republicans do. They weaponize government. But you can see here by a show of hands that they don't actually want any consequences to befall either. I don't know. Maybe they do just for Hunter Biden, but they don't for Donald Trump.
We can take a minute. No, it's serious. This is a serious matter. If y'all need to think about it, we can take a moment and think about it.
There's Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? She's not raising her hand. Like when she's asked, do you think that people convicted under the U.S. federal system should be punished? And she's saying no. Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't think so.
It is serious. This is very serious. Think about it. Should both Hunter and Trump be held accountable? I want to see whether you'd raise your hands. Should Hunter and Trump both be held accountable if they're found guilty on any of their indictments?
None of the Republicans will do it. Wow. Let's think about the implications. Think about the implication. What does this imply? What does this mean? What does this mean? Republicans are telling us that they don't think Donald Trump or Hunter Biden should be held accountable if they're found guilty in a U.S. court of law. The Democrats think so. Democrats believe in the U.S. government system, but Republicans don't. Republicans do not think that if Donald Trump or Hunter Biden are indicted or are found guilty, that they should be punished. Why? Is it because Republicans don't actually believe in the United States? They believe in the Confederacy, but they don't actually believe in the United States. They're authoritarians. They're exposed at this point. They're authoritarians. They're Nazis. They're fucking Nazis. White supremacist Confederate Nazis. That's what they are. They're fucking Nazis. Look at it right there. They don't believe in an American government. They don't believe it. They're fucking showing you right now.
Raise your hand if you think that equal justice under the law applies and Trump should be held accountable. I think it is worse than embarrassing that Republicans won't raise their hands. They refuse to say that equal justice under the law should apply to everyone. And when you step back and think about it,
then what about the January 6th defendants?
It's kind of scary.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Right? We should think about capital punishment for Donald Trump. Equal justice under the law. That's a great point. Oh my goodness. What a great point. So Donald Trump, when he was president, executed 13 people in federal prison. There was a ban. They had stopped it. The United States had stopped doing federal executions for like 20 years was the last federal execution. But when Donald Trump got into office, that was like the first thing he did is start up the federal executions. He executed 13 people when he was president. Before he was president, there was a murder in Central Park, New York. and the press or somebody were trying to frame these 5 black kids and say that they were the ones to blame for it. Donald Trump himself paid the money to put out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the death penalty for those 5 kids who were later found out to be innocent. They were not guilty of those crimes. They were framed. So for sure, let's talk about equal justice under the law for January 6th defendants Donald Trump. Oh, yes. Do you know that the penalty for treason is death? Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, the last time the United States used the death penalty was in the 50s for 2 people, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. The United States executed Ethel and Julius Rosenberg for treason, for betraying the United States, because they stole secrets from the United States. That's what they did. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg stole secrets from the United States and helped out our enemies. So the United States executed them. So I would think that the United States has a very good, very big interest, a compelling interest in applying the death penalty to Donald Trump. Absolutely. Absolutely. What a good idea. But you can see Republicans are not on board with that. Why would they not be on board with equal justice? Why? Why would Republicans not be on board with equal justice? Oh, that's right, because they're authoritarians. And they don't actually believe in justice. They only believe in power. They only believe in power. Donald Trump gets a pass in trying to overthrow the government because he has the power. Hunter Biden doesn't get a pass because he's the family member of a political enemy. It has nothing to do with justice. It's all about power. Jared Kushner, who has done way worse than Hunter Biden, gets a pass because he's with the power of Donald Trump. That's why. The power of white supremacy. He's with authoritarianism. That's why he gets a pass, but not Hunter Biden. You see how that works? It's a different value system. Republicans are literally white supremacists, are literally Nazis, are literally Confederates. They're Confederates trying to overthrow the U.S. government. They're Confederates. They're Confederates. Like, I guess you can, I mean, if you want to be accurate, they're Confederates.
This double standard insults the institutions of Congress that people fought and died to build. This impeachment hearing clearly is not about justice. We cannot say equal justice under the law for everyone except for the guy who holds the leash.
Right? Isn't it weird how Republicans are all raw, justice, but when it comes to their own people, they ignore it. And you're gonna say, oh, what about Democrats? Yeah, all right. Here, let's talk about that. This is a graphic of all the Democratic senators who are calling for the resignation of Senator Menendez. Who is Senator Menendez? Bobby Menendez from New York, senator from New York. He's been indicted by the Justice Department of corruption and bribery. He's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And he's responsible for the foreign aid that the United States doles out. You know, the United States has some money. It gives out to foreign governments and says, hey, if you want to keep this money coming, you're going to do some things the United States wants you to do. And so in Egypt, you know, they have a history of like murdering journalists and opposition people. So the United States is like, look, dudes, you don't get this foreign aid unless you stop murdering people like journalists and you let democracy flourish. Like, so, well, all fine and dandy for the United States, but if you're authoritarian in government, you don't want that you don't want to have to deal with that. You want to just murder the journalists who tell the truth about you. So what the government did of Egypt was it bribed Senator Menendez to keep giving them foreign aid, even though the government kept murdering people, journalists. And Bobby Menendez agreed to it, said, sure, I'll take your money to undermine the United States policy. Well, the United States Justice Department found out about it, and they indicted him. Said, look, dude, you're fucking betraying the United States. So I'm saying that Bobby Menendez should resign. He's a traitor. He's betraying our country. Yeah, that might weaken the Democrats in the Senate, but it's not about power. It's about what's just. It's about what's good for the United States, not what's good for the Democrats. And corruption is always bad for the United States. It doesn't matter who it comes from. So I'm not alone, right? Look at all these people who also agree with me that Bobby Menendez should resign. You know what the overwhelming thing? What's the thing that connects all these people, all these senators? There's something that makes them all alike. They may look different, but there's something that makes them the same. They're all Democrats. They're all Democrats. Democratic senators are calling for one of their own people to resign, which will cost them power in the Senate, because the guy who it is dirty and he's not clean. He's corrupt. So they want to boot out this corrupt bad guy. Wow. That's some principles, yo. That's some principles. You know what's not up there? And I'm looking at Fox News, right? It's not like I'm looking at some left-wing station. I'm taking this from Fox News. You know who's not up there? Republicans. There are no Republicans calling on Bobby Menendez to resign. Why not? Why not? Bobby Menendez isn't a Republican. He's a Democrat. And by Bobby Menendez resigning, that gives power to the Republicans. Why wouldn't the Republicans be calling for Bobby Menendez to resign? Oh, because they too have members in their party who are corrupt, but they don't want to call on their members to resign. Do you see what I mean? So it's okay for Republican members to be corrupt because that corruption serves the power for Republicans. But it's not okay. And they won't call for Bobby Menendez to resign because Bobby Menendez's corruption is identical to Republican corruption. You know who else took a bribe, tried to get a bribe from a foreign government in order for foreign policy favors? Donald Trump. He was impeached for it. And all the Republicans, except for Romney maybe, voted to acquit. They said it was okay. So that's why no Republicans will call for Bobby Menendez to resign, because their own president did the same thing and they all voted to acquit. There's a qualitative difference between Democrats and Republicans. You can see it for yourself, right? I don't have to. It's about values. Let's see. Donald Trump liable for fraud, September 26th. So what he did was he overvalued his company, and what's it called? Overvalued his company and then took out loans against his overvalued company. He inflated the value of his company so he could use it as collateral to get bigger loans. And that's you can't do that. You can't lie like that. You can't. That's fraud. and so he's guilty, and Trump cannot do business in New York anymore. Have you noticed gas prices have gone up? That's Mohammed bin Salman. He did that. Mohammed bin Salman did that. Isn't that great? Mohammed bin Salman increased the price of gas in the United States. How did he do that? Well, because, check it out, Russia and Saudi Arabia have likely made close to $3 billion this quarter as OPEC Plus production cuts push oil towards $100 a barrel. So it's in the interests of both Saudi Arabia and Russia to have high gas prices because they can make more money. But also, Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudis know and understand that Americans are very sensitive to gas prices, and they will tend to blame the U.S. president for whatever the gas price is at the time. So Donald Trump understood this. So he went to Saudi Arabia to do a bunch of deals with Saudi Arabia so they would lower the price of gas for him so he could get elected when he was president. So he could say that, oh, I did that. Well, Saudi Arabia, no joke, Saudi Arabia does not like Joe Biden. They do not like Joe Biden. They do not like the Democrats. So in order to ensure that the American voters are very angry at Joe Biden, the Saudis are going to cut production. It's going to help Russia, but it's going to hurt the Americans too. So they're okay with it. So what does that say? Russia and Saudi Arabia have made billions in additional oil revenue after their production cuts lifted prices. Russia likely generated an additional $2.8 billion over the past quarter, according to Energy Aspects data. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has likely pulled in about $2.6 billion in extra revenue. So, yeah, guys, Russia's all about. So when you go to your gas prices, understand it's Mohammed bin Salman. Understand that it's Mohammed bin Salman who's increased the price of oil by cutting production in order to make it bad for Joe Biden. If you blame Joe Biden, then that means Mohammed bin Salman's plan is working. And you're on Team Saudi Arabia. Because remember, Saudi Arabia wants Joe Biden out of there. You know what? I have all this stuff about Salem payroll tax, but I've been talking for yeah, right. So I've been telling you how what happens in Ukraine is what's going to happen in Taiwan. All right, here's the other side of that. Remember how I told you Russia was using an information war against its neighbors in order to confuse them so they would be unable to attack? China is learning from Russia and doing the same thing to Taiwan. China's doing the same thing to Taiwan. And learning from Russia and doing the same thing to Taiwan. In July, one of Taiwan's top newspapers, United Daily News, published a story based on supposedly leaked minutes from a secret government meeting. Supposedly, America had asked Taiwan to make biological weapons, but that's not true, right? It was a big fat lie. It sounded, and they could tell it was a lie because it used official sounding phrases that are used in mainland China, but not in Taiwan. So it was disinformation. But the Taiwanese media picked it up anyways and ran with it and put it out everywhere. And then they made it worse. It was like a game of telephone. By the time the media got it and put it out there, the rumor had turned into that Taiwan was going to collect 150,000 samples of Taiwanese blood and hand them over to the Americans so they could develop a virus to kill Chinese people. Like, it was stupid. Like, what? That's not true at all. But that's the disinformation campaign put out by China to convince the Taiwanese people to give up on the idea of democracy and join the authoritarians in China. So it's actually happening. The Chinese people the Chinese are doing the same thing, information war, that the Russians did to the Georgians and to the Ukrainians. So yeah, there's a presidential election. So China is using information war in Taiwan to try to turn the people against America, and turn it toward China. And it's not anything different, right? It's the same thing the Russians do. They're using the same techniques as Russia. That's why it's important that you understand what the Russians are doing, because the Chinese are going to do the same thing. They already are against Taiwan. That's why it's important you understand that Taiwan and Ukraine are connected. If Republicans are trying to cut aid to Ukraine, it's because Republicans will cut aid to Taiwan too. I have this big long thing on the Salem payroll tax, but I don't have the energy for it. Voters will be inundated with polls suggesting Biden is unpopular and a much closer race. Information warfare. Pundits will ask questions like, why isn't Biden more popular? And why isn't Biden doing much better in the polls? They will use these polls to raise questions about Biden and Harris's re-election prospects. Exhibit number 1. A bad poll shows Joe Biden and Donald Trump close. And then they start questioning about Biden's age, Biden's awareness, a bunch of bullshit, right? They're using these stupid polls to insinuate more bullshit. It's just the information campaign. It's information warfare. Americans are no longer like free from warfare. You're in the middle of it all the time. I hate to tell you, but that's the way it is. I've been going for fucking ever, guys. I've been talking forever. And I don't know if Swiftly Taken is listening or what's going on. But like, or if he's just recording it to like use against me. I don't know. Maybe he's a good guy, maybe he's a bad guy. I don't know. But yeah, someone's listening. So anyways, I'm doing this not to like demoralize you, but to make you aware that of the tactics and techniques used by the other side and how they're all connected to one another in a global scheme to snuff out freedom and justice. Where the view you should be taking is a lot wider than what you can see. Yeah, it's all connected, Anyways, I've been talking too much, so I will leave it at that. Yeah. Leave it at that. What else can I even possibly talk about? I mean, more, but like I don't want to. I have no energy. I need to quit. So until next time, America, Pogokiro out. Peace. Stop.